We are going to get started, so if everybody could take their seat. Thank you. So welcome, everybody. We're going to have Mr. Miller lead us in the pledge.
All right, please stand. Put your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We are meeting together, but broadcasting remotely tonight, and welcome all those who are participating by watching through YouTube. As a reminder, we welcome public comment and have provided a mechanism for you to make public comment by leaving voice messages to be played to the board and the public during our broadcast. If you wish to speak at a future meeting, please go to our public participation page on www.lbschools.net, which will give you more information about how to give public comment. As a reminder, in conformance with the Brown Act, when we hear testimony on an item that is not listed on the agenda, a full discussion of that topic would have to be delayed until such time as the item can be publicly posted in advance as a regular agenda item. The board has been meeting in closed session regarding matters listed on today's closed session agenda and wishes to report that no reportable actions were taken. Public hearing, we have none. Agenda items, are there any items for a separate action, or is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
Move approval.
Discussion? All in favor with a roll call vote, Dr. Benitez?
Aye.
Ms. Kerr?
Aye.
Mr. Otto?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And I vote aye. So hearing no opposition or abstentions, that motion passes unanimously. Approval of minutes.
Move to approve.
Oh, we're not doing that? Okay. Oh,
I withdraw my motion to approve.
I was thrown because it says action. So,
I'm sorry. These aren't the minutes from last meeting? What is this? Oh, these are public comments. Okay.
okay, stand corrected on that. We have no minutes to approve. And we have no student board member to introduce, so I'm just going to cross that off. Communications, we have none. And now we are at public testimony on items listed on the agenda. And I believe we do have those, so we'll hear those now.
Hello, my name is Sarah Paulin. I am a parent of Baron Lim, who is attending Millikan High School. I would like to address item number 14 on the agenda and ask you to consider the LCAP budget allocation for the implementation of the Khmer Dual Language Immersion Program at Wither Elementary School. In my research dissertation for a doctoral degree in educational leadership at Cal State Long Beach, I found that the lack of language study leads to low higher academic achievement among later generations Cambodian Americans. I urge you to consider investing in our community. Thank you, and I appreciate our board president, Diana Craighead, board members, superintendent, Dr. Jill Baker, and executive staff. Thank you again.
Good evening, board members, Superintendent Baker, and staff. My name is Tracy Walden, and I am a parent, and I am providing public comment on Agenda 14. I just really want to make it brief. I have 3 children, and I personally know that there's a need for African American student support in closing the academic achievement gap. Resources such as tutoring. I've had to work 3 jobs in the past to get tutoring, math support for my son. So it definitely would be nice to see more support for our students of the Black ethnicity. I am encouraged by the district's promise of $750,000 in Black student achievement to establish a committee piloting a Black student achievement program. Unfortunately, this commitment has not yet been confirmed in writing. I hope the district will commit to this program in the 2021-22 LCAP so there can be a public report of this program with goals and metrics publicly available. If this process is transparent to the public, I feel more involved in my child's education and trust that the district is holding itself accountable to parents and students. Therefore, I am requesting that, 1, the Black Student Achievement Program be established and written into the 2021-22 LCAP. 2, the advisory committee for this program can be open to student, staff, teacher, and members of the public to join. 3, the district will work to make this process publicly transparent so parents, students, teachers, staff, and community members can understand how this will affect students' education in the district. Thank you for your time and attention.
Good evening, Superintendent Baker and members of the board. My name is Eliana Walls. I am a junior at Long Beach Poly and a youth organizer with Californians for Justice. I am here to speak on agenda item 14 and 18. Before the pandemic, I only had one teacher and one class that I was really excited about. On top of that, it was hard to keep up with the pace of high school, and my grades weren't where I wanted them to be. This was especially difficult because there wasn't an adult outside of that one teacher that I felt confident or comfortable going to ask for support. Every time I spoke with my counselor, I felt like she dismissed my experiences, and I always felt worse leaving her office than when I went in. I often felt more confused and upset when I spoke to her. During the pandemic, young people have gone through a lot. Black youth have felt it especially hard. I have felt isolated and lacked motivation in school. On top of that, I've also witnessed murder after murder of Black people on my phone. George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and Ma'Khia Bryant, who was my age when she was killed by police. With the millions of dollars in pandemic relief funds the district is receiving, we need to listen to students on how to best use those resources to reimagine and rebuild racially just schools. I'm glad to know that the district is going through a curriculum to audit and ensure students have a culturally relevant learning experience. I am also glad to hear that there is a commitment to invest $23 million to hire more full-time staff. In addition to these investments, we need to prioritize making ethnic studies a graduation requirement. We should invest resources from our COVID relief funds to do everything possible to enact this as a policy for our district. I want to learn more about the contributions of Black folks and other ethnicities in this city and country. Secondly, prioritize the hiring and professional development of BIPOC teachers and staff, especially those who can implement ethnic studies curriculum. And lastly, invest in the establishment of a Black Student Achievement Program. I know I would benefit greatly from a space where I can feel supported and reflected during a time where I'm experiencing the most academic and personal needs. We need courageous and collective leadership at this moment. We all want to see students thrive in a safe and caring environment, but to get there, we need student voice to be valued and reflected in the budget. We look forward to working with district leadership and the board to develop a budget that reflects the values of our community and to reimagine and rebuild a vision for racially just schools. Thank you.
Good evening, board members of Long Beach Unified School District. My name is Awitz Romo Gonzalez, and I serve as an organizer for Californians for Justice. I am submitting a comment on agenda item 18, Expanded Learning Opportunity Grant Plan. As part of our Reimagine and Rebuild campaign, organizers and student leaders across California, including here in Long Beach, have been advocating for a restorative restart and the need for racial justice in curriculum and teaching. We can't go back to normal. A 6-week restorative restart is an opportunity for our schools to put a pause on academic and grading and instead offer skill building such as conflict resolution, emotional literacy, and healthy relationships, to name a few. During this time, I would encourage schools to acknowledge and honor the trauma students and families have experienced and continue to face. In addition to that, the district must acknowledge and uplift this community's abundance. Students have taken on caretaker roles, jobs to support their families, various hobbies and skills. As we return from this pandemic, we need to honor what else students are bringing into our classrooms. We must set our sights on a restorative, whole child approach to education, which is key to creating racially just schools. We can reject the idea of returning to normal by centering Black, Brown, and Asian Pacific Islander students and families' voices in school policies and budget decisions. An ethnic studies course is just one way of centering people's voices, experiences, and histories. As an ethnic studies major from UC Riverside and CSU Long Beach alumni from the Social and Cultural Analysis of Education graduate program, I personally have experienced the benefit of studying my community's history and the history of various communities that make up our city, country, and world. We applaud the district for investing in a curriculum audit and working with Dr. Muhammad to address racism and bias in the curriculum. However, racial justice in curriculum and teaching can also include the hiring, training, and retention of teachers of color, implementing ethnic studies as a course, culturally relevant textbooks, and offering extra support services for Black students and students of color. For these reasons, I call for a restorative restart and a commitment to transforming our schools to adopt a racially just curriculum and teaching. Thank you.
Good evening, Superintendent Baker and the members of the board. My name is Aaliyah Vega, and I'm a junior at Long Beach Poly and a youth organizer with California for Justice. I'm here to speak on agenda items 14 and 18. This pandemic has not hit all families equally. Black and Brown communities have been hit the hardest, and returning back to school needs to account for this reality. I personally felt the negative impact of the pandemic and the toll it can take on one's mental health. It has been more than a year since schools were initially transitioned to virtual learning, and within that year, I have experienced levels of depression and anxiety that were never felt at this depth before. On top of that, being away from my school community has negatively impacted my relationships. For instance, I have yet to make a single new friend this school year. Additionally, I have not been able to bond with any of my teachers. As a CHA youth leader, it has been great to work closely with Superintendent Dr. Baker and Dr. Brown, as well as board members Dr. Benitez and Ms. Kurd. We appreciate you all uplifting our need for a 6-week restorative restart that prioritizes mental health and wellness and relationship building. We also think that it's great that the district is investing in RJ coaches at every elementary school and the $1.6 million commitment to establish Renaissance centers at every high school. And we know we can do better, and we need to do better by expanding RJ coaches to all middle and high schools. During the 6-week restorative restart, students, teachers, parents, and staff should have the opportunity to heal together and build community while learning critical life skills and culturally relevant practices for holding relationships. We need to also ensure that we prioritize wellness screens for all students by collecting street-level data via one-on-one empathy interviews and surveys co-developed by students. Lastly, investing in Restorative Restart ensures that we prepare students and teachers to be able to navigate difficult and complex challenges throughout the school year by developing their skills and knowledge that are culturally relevant and trauma-informed. We need courageous and collective leadership at this moment. We all want to see students thrive in a safe and caring environment, but to get there, we need to prioritize student voices and focus on the restorative approach to our education. We look forward to working with the district leadership and the board to develop a budget that reflects the values of our community and to reimagine and rebuild a vision for racially just schools. Thank you.
Good evening, Superintendent Baker and members of the board. My name is Kara Coulter, and I am a 9th grader at Cabrillo High School and a youth organization at California for Justice. I will be speaking on agenda items 14 and 18. Let me start off by saying we cannot go back to normal. We have to bring light to what has happened with everything like trauma, stress, racial hate that people continue to go through. It is very important that we have representation of our community diversity in our schools. Seeing just white people being shown as powerful and that they helped everyone get to where they are today is dehumanizing. Seeing majority white teachers as well does not encourage me as much as it would seeing a teacher that looks at me to learn. Being a black girl in 9th grade, my whole middle school career, I did not have one black teacher, but in high school, I have had my first black teacher in my whole student life at LBUSD. I wish that we had more representation of black people and other races as well. During this pandemic, I went through a lot of emotions I never knew one could go through. Going back to school after a stressful time of staying home, seeing all the COVID deaths and cases rising and the killings of black people was so hard for me. On top of that, I had to keep my grades up and hopefully stay on top of my work. We applaud the district for investing in a curriculum audit and working with Dr. Muhammad to address racism and bias in curriculum teaching. As CFJ leaders, we are calling on district leadership to double down on these efforts and invest in the following specific things to prioritize racial justice in teaching curriculum. Making ethnic studies a requirement. We should invest resources with our COVID relief funds to do everything possible to enact as a policy of our district. Second, prioritizing the hiring of professional development of Black, Indigenous, POC teachers and staff, especially those who can implant ethnic studies and curriculum. And lastly, invest in anti-racist and anti-bias training for staff. We need courageous and collective leadership at this moment. There's a lot of pressure on the district and staff and teachers, but also on students and families. We all want to see students thrive in a safe, caring environment, but we need student voices to be valid and reflected in the budget. We look forward to working with district leadership and board to develop a budget that reflects the value of our community and to reimagine and rebuild a vision for racially just schools. Thank you.
Good evening, Superintendent Baker and members of the board. My name is Kayla S. Coulter. I am a senior at Cabrillo High School and a youth organizer at Californians for Justice. I will be speaking on agenda items 14 and 18. I want to start off by saying that we can reject the idea of return to normal by centering the voices of Black, Brown, and ABI students and their families in school policy and budget decisions. As CFJ youth leaders, we are calling on district and board leadership to invest in the 6-week restorative restart at the beginning of the fall semester and prioritizing mental health, wellness, and relationship building. A simple relationship with your teacher and other caring adults could open doors to things that you never thought were there in the first place. For example, my relationship with my avid teacher, Mr. Razzo, had led to him referring me to a scholarship opportunity that could pay my entire tuition for college. Even though it was during a virtual learning, we didn't have a problem communicating about the scholarship application because of the fact that we were comfortable emailing each other instead of opting out to do so. Because of the relationships I have with my teachers, school became more enjoyable and I felt more connected and supported. During a 6-week restorative restart, students, teachers, parents, and staff should have the opportunity to heal together and build community while learning critical life skills and culturally relevant practices for holding relationships. We also need to ensure that we prioritize wellness screenings for all students by collecting street-level data via one-on-one empathy interviews and surveys co-developed by students. Lastly, investing in a restorative restart ensures that we prepare students and teachers to be able to navigate difficult and complex challenges throughout the year by developing skills and knowledge that are culturally relevant and trauma-informed, such as peer-to-peer medication. In conclusion, as a member of Californians for Justice and a leader at Cabrillo High School, I call on district and school site leaders and parents to work in collaboration with students and approve a budget that reflects on our values and needs. Thank you.
Good morning, Superintendent Baker and members of the board. My name is Isabel Martinez, and I am a sophomore at Long Beach Poly High School, and I am also a youth organizer with Californians for Justice, here to speak on agenda item 14 and 18. As a Latina, I never personally felt that the experience of my community was conveyed throughout my history nor English classes. In addition to that, knowing the strength and grit of my community, I also never felt that the contributions of the Latinx community has been as acknowledged other than individuals like Cesar Chavez. It makes me frustrated to know that I do not have a space or as much accessibility at school to learn more about my people along with other communities of color in society. I do not feel that I have been reflected in my learning, nor have had the chance to learn and expand my understanding of other communities as well. Especially in an age where the movement for racial justice throughout the country has been growing, it is important to combat all of the ignorance which exists in all communities that contributes to the upholding of systemic racism. This can help enlighten and unify everyone on all of our different experiences within our different communities. I have had the opportunity to take ethnic studies as a dual enrollment course at CSULB, and although the courses I have taken so far have been empowering and enlightening, these courses should be made more accessible and available to students within their classes at school. It is important to cultivate a space in classrooms in which students can engage in discussion and participate in critical thinking as they challenge themselves to be understanding of the different experiences people of color have and how systemic racism works to oppress these communities. However, it is equally as important to ensure these classrooms also center and amplify students of color to make them feel empowered and excited about the content they are engaging with. In addition to a curriculum I do not feel reflected in, it was not until my 9th grade year that I had my first teacher of color in LBUSD. It is disempowering as a student of color to feel that our learning in school should be centered around a Eurocentric education and that I do not have a teacher that I could personally identify with. Here's what we can do. We can make ethnic studies a graduation requirement for all of our students within the district. We should invest resources from our COVID relief funds to do everything possible to enact this as a policy for our district. Long Beach is one of the most diverse cities in the country, and there's no reason why this should not already be in place. Secondly, we should prioritize the hiring and professional development of teachers and staff, especially those who can implement an ethnic studies curriculum into our district. We need courageous and collective leadership at this moment. There's also pressure on district staff and teachers, but also on students and families. We all want to see students thrive in a safe and caring environment, but to get there, we need student voices to be valued and reflected in the budget. We look forward to working with district leadership and the board to develop a budget that reflects the values of our community and to reimagine and rebuild a vision for racially just schools. We look forward to working with you, and thank you for your time.
Good evening. My name is Nicole Garnochi, and I would like to comment on item number 14, LCAP and budget update, and number 18, expanded learning opportunities grant plan. I represent Public Advocates, a civil rights organization with deep expertise in equitable school funding, and I support the LCAP work group along with the Children's Defense Fund California, which is comprised of LBUSD parent leaders and community-based organizations. With respect to number 18, expanded learning opportunities plan, I would like to applaud the district for using ELO funds to hire SEL RJ coaches for every elementary school, hiring more than 100 additional full-time staff to provide learning supports, and for providing targeted support for students with special needs. However, there are a number of concerns that I hope you will address before adopting the ELO this evening. First, there is no specific focus on how English learners will be provided differentiated support for learning acceleration, even though the data documented in the ELO shows that English learners have been impacted the most academically by the pandemic of any student subgroup. Second, the ELO grant provides $1,000 to the district for every unhoused student, but there is no mention of specific supports for students experiencing homelessness in the ELO. What is the plan to support these students? Third, the description of how parents will be informed of the opportunities for supplemental instruction and support seems to be a reiteration of the district's existing engagement strategies, such as Canvas, website, social media, etc. However, the ELO grant is supposed to target disengaged students and students who did not enroll in kindergarten this past year. So these strategies do not seem sufficient to reach students who need the most support. What is the district planning to do above and beyond its regular methods of communication to engage disengaged students or those who did not even enroll in the 2021 school year? We encourage you to consider these concerns and address them in the ELO or LCAP prior to adoption. With respect to number 14, LCAP and budget, I would like to applaud the district for taking initiative to create a voluntary learning acceleration and support plan and for committing to a public budget tracker. Both of these documents will go a long way in providing the transparency needed to support authentic engagement. However, I am requesting that you include everything in the Learning Acceleration and Support Plan in the LCAP because it is essential to have a single strategic budget document. The LCAP is the most appropriate document for this purpose because it is already designed to align needs with goals, metrics, and actions, along with a reflection of what is working and what is not over time. Each of the pillars of the Learning Acceleration and Support Plan fits under a state priority and could be used as a goal in the LCAP. In addition, there's nothing that limits the LCAP to only LCFF funds. LBUSD can include all of its federal pandemic relief funds, Title I, and other federal and state funds in the LCAP, as other districts are planning to do. For example, Oakland Unified is including ELO investments and other one-time relief from COVID funding in its LCAP instead of having separate plans. Perhaps most importantly, there is already capacity among student, parent, and community leaders to review and encourage engage with the LCAP that has been developed over the last several years. And unlike the other two plans, the LCAP is a yearly document that can be referenced by the community. Stakeholders are more likely to be authentically involved if they can access budget information by reference.
Good afternoon, Superintendent Baker and members of the board. My name is Joshua Jimenez. I'm a resident representing the east side of Long Beach, born and raised and attended Long Beach Public Schools all my life. I'm also an organizer with Californians for Justice, and I'm here to talk about agenda items 14 and 18. Our student leaders have gathered almost 300 surveys from Long Beach high school students, gathering personal stories from their peers about the struggle of virtual learning, the absence of mental health support, and genuine relationships being built, as well as the cultural insensitivity when it comes to the methods of teaching and learning. Under this pandemic, we have seen inequities highlighted and exacerbated in our communities and in our education system. Many families have been impacted by COVID-19, specifically our working class Black and brown students and their families who bear the brunt of economic instability and the lack of proper access to much needed resources. Over this past year, we also have come to learn about the struggles of our students regarding virtual learning. I have come to see the struggles of our parents who have to make sure their child's education is prioritized over a computer screen and making sure that they have to work a full-time job. I see that our young folks are having to take up full-time jobs during the school year to help pay for the medical bills because a family member ended up with COVID and they don't have health insurance because they are undocumented. I see that our students are not feeling connected to their school community. Our students acknowledge for themselves that their mental health and wellness are not prioritized. Our young folks also naming that their values, their interests of what school can be is not reflected in their school's curriculums and their everyday learning. We can't go back to business as usual. We have to reject the idea by centering the voices of Black, brown, and API students and families in school policies and budget decisions. At Californians for Justice, our youth leaders have been at the forefront of our statewide Reimagine and Rebuild campaign. With a restorative restart approach to our education, this could look like 6 weeks of focusing on relationship building and a sense of belonging. A pause on academics to center the imagination and creativity of our youth through project-based learning, critical thinking, and discussion-based classrooms. This looks like investing in the mental health and wellness of students and staff. We should be hiring more counselors, nurses, and therapists at every high school instead of having a carceral response. Investing in wellness centers at all of our high schools in Long Beach also. At the end of the day, our courageous and bold CFJ youth leaders and organizers have the solution. We ask for your bold and collective leadership in the interest of our most impacted Black and brown students and families of color. We see this as an effort to work alongside, not above or below, our students to advocate and push for racially just schools.
Buenos días, mi nombre es Jorge Aro. Tengo 4 hijos en el distrito escolar de Long Beach y me gustaría opinar acerca del número 14 de la agenda, y esta es mi sugerencia. Si pudieran contratar más jovencitos, estudiantes de universidad, para ayudar a los niños de primaria que están más atrasados en sus clases, para que puedan también ellos avanzar y ponerse al día. Pues muchísimas gracias y que estén bien. Adiós.
Good morning. My name is Jorge Aro. I have 4 kids in LBUSD. I would like to give my opinion regarding number 14 on the agenda. This is my suggestion. If you can contract young students from the university to help elementary school kids that are behind in their classes so that they can make progress and be up to date. Thank you very much. Hope you are well. Goodbye.
Hola, mi nombre es Aquilina Castellanos. Mi comentario es referente al número 14 de la agenda. Yo quiero decir a las juntas escolar que contraten a más maestros para los niños con educación especial e individual. Gracias.
Hello, my name is Aquilina Castellanos. My comment is regarding number 14 on the agenda. I would like to tell the school board to hire more teachers for the children with special and individual education. Thank you.
Hola, buenos días. Mi nombre es Erlinda Aro. Mi comentario es referente al número 14 de la agenda. Yo quiero pedirle a la Junta que se remodele la escuela Washington y Edison, ya que son las más históricas de Long Beach, especialmente el aire acondicionado, y que tengan una buena regulación, ya que a veces los niños tienen frío cuando está haciendo calor, y cuando está haciendo calor tienen frío, salen afuera con su suéter y está haciendo calor. Y al revés, cuando está haciendo frío, salen muy rojos, chapeteados de que adentro están calientitos. Entonces me gustaría que se regulara eso. Y también me gustaría que hubiera más escuelas de doble inversión. Vivo cerca de la Edison, Chávez, Oropesa, Franklin, Washington. Y no hay para que mis hijos aprendan español. Y aplico a otras escuelas que están lejos de mí y no puedo ir para allá porque están lejos. Entonces me gustaría que hubiera la oportunidad para nuestros estudiantes de habla hispana, de aprendiendo inglés, que tuvieran clases de español. Porque desafortunadamente tienen la oportunidad de aprender español hasta que entran a la high school y están en desventaja con niños que han tomado clases desde la primaria y secundaria. Bueno, muchas gracias y espero tomen en cuenta.
Hello, good morning. My name is Erlinda Aro. My comment is regarding number 14 on the agenda. I would like to ask the board to remodel the Washington and Edison schools, since they are the most historic schools in Long Beach, especially the air conditioning, and to have good settings because sometimes the children are cold. When it is hot and when it is hot, they are cold. They go outside with their sweater and it's hot. And on the other hand, when it is cold, they come out very red, blushed, because they are warm inside. So I would like that to be adjusted. And I will also like to see more dual immersion schools. I live near Edison, Chavez, Oropesa, Franklin, Washington, and there are no schools for my children to learn Spanish. And I apply to other schools that are far away from me, and I can't go there because they are too far away. So I would like to have the opportunity for our Spanish-speaking students learning English to have Spanish classes, because unfortunately they have the opportunity to learn Spanish until they enter high school, and they are at a disadvantage with children who have taken classes since elementary and middle school. Well, thank you very much, and I hope you take our suggestions into consideration. Thank you, and have a nice day.
President Craighead, question about public comment. Do we have the Spanish comments in our packet, or did we not receive those? Yep, but I think we should still get the printouts in. So you're saying it doesn't show up at all?
Does.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, and because we do have a sheet that prints out how many we received in Kamai.
The ones that you received in Kamai, they're complete gibberish, but the system for some reason is trying to make a transcript.
Got it.
It's not actually for you.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Could we get a copy of what the interpreters then read at the podium, either after, or are you doing it live? Okay, that would be great.
Yes.
If they could do that. And even if we don't get them, if we get them tonight or tomorrow, it would be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, that's 30 minutes. No, that's not 30 minutes. One more, I'm sorry. One more.
Nuestras sugerencias. Gracias y que tengan buen día.
Good evening, Superintendent Baker and members of the board. My name is Megan Lane, and I am a junior at Long Beach Poly High School. I sit on the Superintendent Student Advisory Committee, and I am also a youth organizer at Californians for Justice. I'm here today to speak on agenda items 14 and 18. As a Black student, I am tired of the contributions made by the Black community in this country being reduced to a chapter on MLK and Rosa Parks. I'm tired of our curriculum focusing on slavery and Black suffrage, and the anger I feel when non-Black students make racist jokes or comments. I'm tired of not having teachers that can relate to my lived experiences and that do not look like me. I'm tired of feeling like Black lives and Black youth and Black experiences do not matter. I'm ready to learn about leaders like Ella Baker, Marsha P. Johnson, Malcolm X, and many others I'm ready to learn about Black Wall Street, the Tulsa Massacre, and the 1964 Freedom Summer, and many others. I'm ready to feel a sense of belonging at school when I'm greeted by Black teachers and feel that my existence, joy, and humanity is being celebrated and reflected on. I'm glad to know that this district is working with Dr. Muhammad on a curriculum audit. And the district wants to create a student community engagement process to review the findings and recommendations. And we are also glad to hear that the commitment to invest $6.9 million on training for teachers and staff on social emotional wellness and academic support. However, I think a real commitment to racial justice in teaching and curriculum could look like making ethnic studies a graduation requirement. We need to invest in resources from our COVID relief funds to do everything possible to enact this policy on our district. Long Beach is one of the most diverse cities in this country, and there is no reason why this should not be in place already. Secondly, to prioritize hiring and professional development of BIPOC teachers and staff, especially those who can implement ethnic studies in their curriculum. And lastly, at the March 17th board meeting, we asked for the establishment of a Black Student Achievement Program. And we have plenty of data that shows that Black students do not feel a sense of belonging and fall behind their white peers. To transform the experience of Black youth in LBUSD, this investment is necessary. We need courage and a collaborative leadership at this moment, and we look forward to working with the district on the board to develop a budget that reflects the values of our community and to rebuild and reimagine a vision for racially just schools. Thank you.
Okay, I believe that was 30 minutes. Okay.
Do we know how many additional comments were left that we didn't hear?
We have 7 more.
Yeah.
So, Madam President, since we actually added this additional meeting to have an opportunity to talk about budget, LCAP, I would urge us to consider listening to the additional comments since we specifically added this meeting for this.
Unless there's no objection to that, we're going to go ahead and, right, I'm getting a thumbs up. Okay, let's do that.
Give us 1 second, we're gonna take it.
Oh, okay. Okay, we'll let our staff prepare so that we can hear the rest of those comments. But you're absolutely right. This is a special meeting so that we can discuss the LCAP and budget, and that's what these comments are addressing. So it makes sense that we do that.
While we have this time that we're waiting, I just want a confirmation.
My
I was
name
going
is
to
Sarah
ask,
Collin. I am a parent.
when we have the Spanish interpretation, are we saying that that's done live, so it's not done beforehand? That was a question that was asked before.
Yeah, that question was asked before,
In addition,
and
there's nothing that limits the LCAP to only
in
LCSF
response to
funds.
that question,
LBUSD can include all of its federal
we
pandemic
will
relief funds,
be
Title I,
given
and other federal and
the
state funds in the LCAP
English
as other districts are
translations
planning to do.
for the public comments given in Spanish, but those will come to us after this meeting. But I'm also guessing they're going to be a part of the public record. So as with all the other public comments, it will become a part of public record. And that holds true even if the comments weren't read at the meeting. If they were submitted, they will be archived in that way. Okay, I think we're ready to go.
Good evening, Superintendent Baker and members of the board. My name is Omar Cardenas. I am a father and advocate to a rising 6th grader who is cognitively divergent and lives with a chronic illness. I am also the lead organizer at Californians for Justice and live in Board District 2. I am here to speak on agenda items 14 and 18. As a parent, the most heartbreaking thing I have experienced is seeing my newborn child undergo multiple invasive surgeries before arriving home. The second most heartbreaking thing I've experienced as a parent is a system that has tried to fit my brilliant child in a box. And I dream of a day when we can get rid of all boxes, where learning inspires joy and curiosity. And as a youth organizer, my role is to co-design spaces with young people to explore new ideas and challenge the status quo, to imagine liberation and self-determination in their lifetime. And for far too long, we have been told that their ideas and visions of education with equity and justice were too expensive, or that there was no funding for that. The time is now to leverage the pandemic relief dollars to fund the education our young people deserve and not business as usual. Our young people have done the work of engaging 300 of their peers, assessing their needs, and have outlined specific investments that we need to prioritize today. CFJ honors Superintendent Baker and Dr. Brown for their ongoing commitment to center student voice and decision-making, and we are very excited about the initial commitment to fund wellness centers at all high schools. We look forward to continue working with the district to engage young people in the initial envisioning phase of this rollout. In addition to wellness centers, we ask district leadership to enact a 6-week restorative restart, like many districts across the state, that center relationship building, mental health, and wellness, and a pause on academics. By doing this, we can build resilient and interdependent school communities. As a parent and youth organizer, it is not lost upon me that too many young people cannot identify one caring adult at their school, or do not feel connected to their peers. CFJ applauds the district for all its efforts to center racial equity and we have an opportunity to double down on existing efforts by listening to young people and implementing ethnic studies as a graduation requirement. Now is the time to combat white supremacy as a dominant narrative and prioritize initiatives that go hard on investing in Black student achievement. We call on the district and board leadership to prioritize student engagement in the development of the final budget to ensure their needs and values are reflected in the final draft. We ask that you meet with CFJ student leaders in the coming weeks to flesh out their budget asks. Thank you for your time. Adelante.
Good evening, Superintendent Dr. Baker and members of the board. My name is Nakia Rice. I am a junior at Lakewood High School. I am also a youth leader at California for Justice. I am submitting a comment about agenda item number 18, expand learning opportunity. Taking this idea would do a lot for me and other students. I don't feel like students' mental health is being cared about enough by teachers, staff, counselors, etc. I also don't feel like there's enough representation of people of color in school. The last time I had a teacher of color was my 8th grade year of school. What this restorative restart would look like is putting a pause on academics and grading, but instead working on skill-building relationships, building between teachers and students. The school needs to acknowledge us students' traumas and experiences we went through in the past year and a half. A lot of us had to pick up on new responsibilities because our parents are working more or lost their jobs. I personally had to help out at home a lot and take care of my little cousins and their academics. Doing that made it harder to keep up with my own academics because there was so much going on at home. Some teachers didn't seem like they cared that students were struggling while still assigning work for us. Another issue is not enough racial justice in teaching and curricula. Hiring more people of color educators and staff would make students feel more connected. What district leaders and the Board of Education can do to support our vision is to introduce it to Long Beach schools. We look forward to working with district leadership and the board to rebuild and regiment and racial justice education system. I hope you all commit to my call to action. Thank you.
Maribel Mireles, mi comentario es sobre el artículo 14. Buenos días, miembros de la mesa directiva y superintendente Break y personas del distrito. Mi nombre es Maribel Mireles, soy madre de un aprendiz de inglés y miembro de Latinos en Acción California. Mi comentario es sobre el artículo 14 para que agreguen intervenciones más diferenciadas que estén diseñadas específicamente para los aprendices de inglés en el borrador del LCAP. Planifiquen pensando en los niños que como el mío son aprendices de inglés y planificar una tutoría de alta calidad basada en estrategias de desarrollo de idioma en inglés. será justo para estos estudiantes. Muchas gracias. De nuevo, hasta luego.
Maribel Mireles, and my comment is regarding Article 14. Good morning, members of the board and Superintendent Baker and people of the district. My name is Maribel Mireles. I am a mother of an English learner and member of Latinos in Action, California. My comment is regarding item number 14. For more interventions that are differential to be added, interventions that are designed specifically for English language learners in the LCAP draft. Plan thinking of the children that like mine, are English learners. Plan a high quality tutoring based on strategies in English language development. It would be fair for those students. Once again, thank you very much. Goodbye.
Buenas tardes a miembros del board, superintendente Baker y staff. Mi nombre es Lilia Ocampo y soy un padre de 2 niños en el distrito. Y mi comentario es acerca de la necesidad que hay para ayudar a los estudiantes que han sufrido en su aprovechamiento académico durante la educación en línea, y por lo cual estoy hablando sobre los cosa número 14 y 18 en la agenda, y mi propuesta es invertir en el bienestar, en lo socioemocional de los estudiantes, con programas de enriquecimiento cultural, de justicia restaurativa, tutoría dirigida a estudiantes que están atrasados académicamente, y también que incluya programas dirigidos a los estudiantes que han estado por más de 5 años con el distrito sin ser reclasificados, ya que eso les afecta en su futuro educativo cuando quieran aplicar para la universidad. Entonces, también me gustaría que se incluyan, que se desarrollen diferentes metas y estrategias designadas para los estudiantes aprendices del inglés para mejorar su lenguaje y acceso, para adaptarse a la tecnología, y que también provean entrenamientos para los estudiantes y para los padres para que puedan ayudar mejor a sus hijos, ya que todo apunta a que la educación se está haciendo más y más mediante tecnología. A pesar de que van a regresar los estudiantes a los salones, gran parte de su tiempo lo invierten en la tecnología. Por eso es que sugiero que se agreguen todas esas prácticas y ayudas para los padres. También para asegurar que la comunicación sea de dos, realmente comunicación, ¿verdad? Que incluya las dos partes, que no nada más sea dar información, pero también recibir y procesar y también incluir, ¿no?, la información que los padres damos, porque nosotros conocemos a nuestros hijos y vemos cómo es que ellos es lo que están pasando trabajos durante que están tomando su educación. Y pues también me gustaría que
Good afternoon, board members, Superintendent Baker, and staff. My name is Lilia Ocampo, and I am a parent of 2 children in the district. My comment is about the need to help students who have suffered in their academic achievement during online education, and that is why I am calling about item number 14 and 18 on the agenda. And my proposal is to invest in the well-being, in the social-emotional well-being of the students with cultural enrichment programs, restorative justice, tutoring targeted to students who are behind academically, and also to include programs targeted to students who have been in the district for more than 5 years without being reclassified, because that affects them in their educational future when they apply for college. Then I would also like to include, I would like for different goals and strategies to be developed for English language learners to improve their language and access for them to adapt to technology. and also provide training for students and parents so that they can better help their children, because everything points to the fact that education is becoming more and more technology driven. And even though they are going to be studying, they are going to be returning students to the classroom, a lot of their time is spent on technology. So that is why I suggest adding all those practices and supports for parents. Also, to ensure that communication is a two-way communication, really a two-way communication that includes both parties. That is not only giving information, but also receiving and processing, and also including the information that parents give, because we know our children and we see what they are going through during their education. And so I would also like to include the information that parents give, because we know our children and we see how they are doing.
Good evening, board members, Superintendent Baker, and staff. My name is Michael Ball, and I would like to comment on item number 18, the Expanded Learning Opportunities Grant Plan. I'm representing Children's Defense Fund California, which is an organization with deep expertise in youth advocacy, and the LCAP Working Group, which is composed of LBUSD parent leaders and community-based organizations. First, I'd like to applaud the district for using ELO funds to hire social-emotional learning and restorative justice coaches for every elementary school, hiring more than 100 additional full-time staff to providing learning supports and for providing targeted support for students with special needs. However, there are still a number of concerns that I hope you all will address before adopting the ELO this evening. Across the board, literacy interventions are important, but there's nothing in the ELO about math, even though the ELO states that the decrease in math proficiency is even greater than declines in reading and writing proficiency. These scores have been low for the past few years, so I would like to ask the board and the district to include a plan for supporting math acceleration in the ELO before its adoption. The ELO is an opportunity for funding to help students catch up academically, and it's vital that students' entire academic experience is afforded the same opportunity. In addition, there are passing references to tutoring in the ELO and the LCAP, but there's no mention of high-dosage tutoring, which is defined as 3 or more sessions per week that last 30 to 60 minutes for at least 10 weeks with a consistent and qualified tutor on a one-to-one basis or in small groups of up to 4 students. Research has shown that tutoring is most effective if it happens during the school day or immediately after and is in line with classroom instruction. It also shows that less consistent and robust tutoring programs do not really work, so it's important to be specific about what kind of tutoring the district is offering. I ask that the district and the board ensure that this is reflected in written form in the ELO before its adoption. And finally, the investment in so many additional staff is also very encouraging, but it's important to plan out for sustainability. The district has mentioned multiple times that they do not want to hire support positions that they will not be able to continue to fund, so we want to know exactly how these hundreds of new positions will be sustained over time, and how will Long Beach Unified recruit with diversity and equity in mind and train this new cohort of staff? How will these positions be distributed among school sites, especially the social-emotional learning TOSAs and counselors on special assignments or COSAs as well? Thank you, and have a great day.
Good evening, LBUSD School Board members and executive staff. My name is Angelica Salazar, Director of Education Equity at the Children's Defense Fund California, a national, regional, and local children's advocacy organization. I have been partnering with and supporting Long Beach parent leaders in the LCAP Accountability Group. My comments pertain to agenda items number 14, LCAP and Budget Update, and 18, Expanded Learning Opportunities Plan. Over the last few years, we have learned that what is in the LCAP will mention what additional services are also available at the school sites. We applaud the school district for making these resources available to local sites. However, for transparency, accountability, and community engagement purposes, it has been hard as a stakeholder to see, know, and understand what those school site programs are and how families can access them. We recommend that LBUSD provides an appendix with school site allocations so that community members can understand what resources are available at their school. Although we are aware that you have compiled school site expenditure plans on your website, those do not seem to be comprehensive accounting of school autonomy dollars. For example, it is not clear if they include the EL services that are determined at the school level, like what is referenced in the LCAP Action 3.7. If they do, the district should cross-reference the specific plan where these services are included for each school site. This year, we also ask that any school site-related actions associated with the Extended Learning Opportunity Plan and Learning Acceleration and Support Plan are also in those appendices. So in conclusion, to promote financial transparency and true community engagement, we recommend that you provide an appendix to the LCAP, the ELO, and the Learning Acceleration and Support Plan that includes the comprehensive school-level allocations that are referenced, as opposed to creating multiple discrete plans for different school sites. Thank you for your time.
Buenos días, miembros de la mesa directiva, Superintendente Baker y personal del distrito. Mi nombre es María Loesa. Soy parte de Latinos in Action California. Mi comentario es sobre el artículo 14 para que agreguen intervenciones más diferenciadas que estén diseñadas específicamente para los aprendices de inglés en el borrador de LCAP. Planifiquen pensando en los niños que son aprendices de inglés para planificar tutorías de alta calidad basada en estrategias de desarrollo del idioma inglés. Esto sería demasiado bueno para todos los estudiantes que son English learners. Gracias.
Good morning, board members, Superintendent Baker, and district personnel. My name is Maria Loesa. I am part of Latinos in Action California. My comment is regarding item 14 for differentiated interventions that are designed specifically for English language learners to be added to the LCAP draft. Plan thinking of children that are English learners. Plan for high quality tutoring based on strategies for English language development. This would be very good for students that are English learners.
Okay, I believe that's all for items listed on the agenda. And now we have public comment. Yeah?
This starts off at Kamai.
Okay, and so now we have public comment for items not listed on the agenda, and a few of those will be in Kumai, so we'll have translation also.
One Hang Sing ប្រធានបទនេះមិនមាននៅក្នុងរបៀបវិរៈសម្រាប់ថ្ងៃទី26ខែឧសភានេះទេសូមជម្រាបសួរលោកស្រីប្រធានសមាជិកគណៈកម្មាធិការសាលារៀនទីក្រុងឡង់បិចលោកស្រីបណ្ឌិត Jill Baker និងបុគ្គលិកទាំងអស់ជាទីគោរពនាងខ្ញុំឈ្មោះវ៉ាន់ហៀងសេងជាម្ដាយរបស់កូន2នាក់គឺសិស្សថ្នាក់ទី3និងថ្នាក់មត្តេយ្យនៅសាលា Eldorado Elementary School នាងខ្ញុំសូមស្នើដល់គណៈកម្មការសាលារៀនរៀបចំបែងចែកកញ្ចប់ថវិកា LCAP ដើម្បីបង្កើតកម្មវិធីបង្ហាត់ភាសាខ្មែរពីរស្របគ្នានៅសាលាវិទ្យាសម្រាប់កូនខ្មែរបានរៀនភាសាវប្បធម៌និងប្រវត្តិសាស្ត្រខ្មែរផងសូមអរគុណ
My name is Van Heng Seng. My name is Van Heng Seng. This topic is not on tonight's agenda. Dear Board President, members of the board, Dr. Jill Baker, and executive staff, I am a mother of 2 children. One is in 3rd grade and another one is in kindergarten. They both attend Alvarado. I am asking the board to allocate the LCAP funds for the Khmer language dual immersion program so that our children can learn Khmer language and culture. Thank you.
នេះមិនមាននៅក្នុងរបៀបវិរៈសម្រាប់ថ្ងៃទី26ខែឧសភានេះទេសូមជម្រាបសួរលោកស្រីប្រធានសមាជិកគណៈកម្មការសាលារៀនទីក្រុងឡង់បិចនិងលោកស្រីអគ្គនាយក Jill Baker និងបុគ្គលិកទាំងអស់ជាទីគោរពនាងខ្ញុំឈ្មោះស្រីពូគួនជាម្ដាយរបស់សិស្សថ្នាក់ទី3នៅសាលា Alvarado Elementary School និងកូនតូចអាយុ2ឆ្នាំម្នាក់ទៀតដែលបានចុះឈ្មោះរងចាំជាមួយអ្នកគ្រូច័ន្ទនិងអ្នកគ្រូសុភាសម្រាប់ចូលរៀនក្នុងកម្មវិធីបង្ហាត់ភាសាខ្មែរពីរស្របគ្នានៅសាលាវិទ្យាខាងមុខនេះក្នុងនាមជាឪពុកម្ដាយយើងទាំងពីរនាក់សូមស្នើដល់គណៈកម្មការសាលារៀនទីក្រុងឡង់បិចមេត្តាបែងចែកកញ្ចប់ថវិកា LCAP សម្រាប់រៀបចំបង្កើតកម្មវិធីបង្ហាត់ភាសាខ្មែរពីរស្របគ្នានេះដល់កូនៗរបស់យើងសូមអរគុណ
This topic is not included on the agenda of the May 26th meeting. Dear Board President, members of the board, and Dr. Jill Baker, my name is Traywood Kuhn, mother of a third grader at Alvarado and a 2.5-year-old whom I had already registered with Mrs. Chan and teacher Sophia in preparation for the Khmer language dual immersion program. As parents, both of us would like to ask the school board to allocate the LCAP budget for the Khmer language dual immersion program. Thank you.
This item is not on the agenda for May 26th. The MIPSOR President, Craighead, board members, Superintendent Dr. Jill Baker, and executive staff. My name is Sakani Lim, 5th grader at Whittier Elementary School. I love to learn English, but at the same time, I also want to learn Khmer language and culture. So when I grow up, I have 2 language skills, and I will be able to serve both American and Khmer people. The Khmer class at Whittier EES since 2019 to the present time helps me to speak Khmer better, and it helps me to have joy to communicate with my parents and grandparents. The Khmer class also helps me to understand more about Khmer culture and history, but that's not enough because the class is only 1 hour per week. Therefore, LBUSD, please allocate the LCAP budget to implement Khmer dual language immersion program in Long Beach schools for our Khmer children and other children. Thank you for your kind consideration.
ខណៈបទនេះមិនមែននៅក្នុងរបៀបវិរៈថ្ងៃទី26 ខែឧសភានេះទេសូមជម្រាបសួរលោកស្រីប្រធានសមាជិកគណៈកម្មការនិងលោកស្រីអគ្គនាយកនៃសាលារៀនទីក្រុង Long Beach នាងខ្ញុំឈ្មោះដានីកនជាម្ដាយរបស់សិស្សថ្នាក់ទី2និងថ្នាក់ទី5នៅសាលា VDA Elementary School កូនទាំងពីររបស់នាងខ្ញុំបានរៀនថ្នាក់ភាសាខ្មែរក្រៅម៉ោងនៅសាលារៀននេះតាំងពីខែមេសាឆ្នាំ2019រហូតដល់សាលាបិទក្នុងរយៈពេលមេរោគរាតត្បាត COVID-19 ហើយបច្ចុប្បន្ននេះបានបន្តរៀនថ្នាក់ភាសាខ្មែរនេះតាម Zoom នាងខ្ញុំសូមស្នើដល់គណៈកម្មការនៃសាលារៀនទីក្រុង Long Beach ឲ្យរៀបចំបែងចែកកញ្ចប់ថវិកា LCAP ដើម្បីបង្កើតកម្មវិធីបង្ហាត់ភាសាខ្មែរពីរស្របគ្នានៅសាលាបឋមសិក្សាវិទ្យាសម្រាប់កុមារាកុមារីខ្មែរតូចបានរៀនសូត្រអំពីភាសាខ្មែរដើម្បីមានចំណេះខាងភាសាខ្មែរទៅអនាគតសូមអរគុណចំពោះការយកចិត្តទុកដាក់មតិរបស់នាងខ្ញុំ
Dear President of the Board, members of the board, and Superintendent Jill Baker, my name is Donnie Gon, mother of 2nd and 5th graders at Whittier Elementary. My 2 children have been attending the after-school Khmer class since April 2019, until the closure of the school due to COVID-19 pandemic. Currently, they continue their Khmer class on Zoom. I am asking the school board to allocate the LCAP funds to create the Khmer language dual immersion program for our youngsters to learn in Khmer. Thank you for taking your time to listen to my public comment.
សូមជម្រាបសួរលោកស្រីប្រធានសមាជិកគណៈកម្មការសាលារៀនទីក្រុង Long Beach លោកស្រីអគ្គនាយកបណ្ឌិត Jill Baker និងបុគ្គលិកទាំងអស់ជាទីគោរពនាងខ្ញុំឈ្មោះ Melissa អៀមជាម្ដាយរបស់សិស្សថ្នាក់ទី10នៅសាលា American និងសិស្សថ្នាក់ទី5នៅសាលា Kabuli នាងខ្ញុំជាម្ដាយនាងខ្ញុំមានការពិបាកក្នុងការជួយបញ្យល់កិច្ចការសាលាដល់កូនទាំងពីរដោយសារនាងខ្ញុំមិនចេះភាសាអង់គ្លេសស្ទាត់ដូច្នេះភាសាខ្មែរមានសារៈសំខាន់ក្នុងការសិក្សារបស់កូនសិស្សខ្មែរនិងគ្រួសារខ្មែរទាំងអស់ហេតុនេះហើយនាងខ្ញុំសូមស្នើសុំដល់ក្រសួងអប់រំ Long Beach មេត្តារៀបចំបែងចែកកញ្ចប់ថវិកា LCAP សម្រាប់បង្កើតថ្នាក់បង្រៀនភាសាខ្មែរពីរស្របគ្នានៅសាលាក្នុងទីក្រុង Long Beach នេះដើម្បីជួយឲ្យកូនខ្មែរ
មានជំនាញពីភាសាសម្រាប់ជួយដល់ពួកគេទៅអនាគតសូមអរគុណដែលបានយកចិត្តទុកដាក់ស្ដាប់ដល់ការស្នើសុំរបស់ពួកយើងខ្ញុំ
Dear Board President, members of the board and Superintendent Jill Baker, my name is Melissa Elm, a mother of a 10th grader at Milliken and a 5th grader at Cubberley. As a mother, I have a hard time working with my two children on their schoolwork because I do not speak fluent English. Khmer language is very important for Khmer students and their families. Therefore, I am asking the school district to please allocate the LCAP budget for the Khmer language dual immersion program to help our children become fluent in two languages. Thank you for listening to our proposal.
Venerable Jared Kai, this item is not on the agenda for May 26. Greetings, Board President, Board members, Superintendent Dr. Jill Baker, and executive staff. My name is Venerable Jared Kai, resident at Sakoborai Temple in Long Beach. As one of Buddhist monks, I have a concern that the Cambodian children are gradually losing their language and identity. The communication gap between seniors and the young generation is growing wider because the seniors lack English skill and grandchildren lack Khmer language and culture skills. Therefore, I would like to request the LBUSD board to allocate the LCAP budget to implement a Khmer dual language immersion program in a Long Beach school to prepare our children to be biliterate and competitive in the local, national, and international job market. This biliteracy skill will allow them to be proficient employees in different industries such as healthcare, business, public services, technology, and education. Thank you so much for your consideration.
Poly High School ចៅទី2រៀននៅ Finkley Middle School ចៅទី3ទី4រៀននៅ Wire Elementary School តាមទី5ទី6ត្រៀមនឹងរៀនចូលរៀនឆ្នាំនេះពីខ្ញុំសំណូមពរលោកស្រីប្រធានគណៈកម្មការរៀនទីក្រុងឡងបិចមេត្តាចាត់ចែងកញ្ចប់ថវិកា LCAP សម្រាប់រៀបចំថ្នាក់រៀនជាភាសាខ្មែរពីរស្របគ្នានៅសាលាវិទ្យាដើម្បីឲ្យចៅខ្ញុំទាំងអស់បានរៀននៅក្នុងកម្មវិធីនេះផងសូមអរគុណសូមគោរពលា
My name is Lynn and I would like to greet the board president, members of the board, Dr. Baker, and executive staff. I have 6 grandchildren. The first one is at Poly High School. The second one is at Franklin Middle School. The other 2 are at Whittier, while the last 2 will be entering school in the fall. I am requesting the school district to allocate the LCAP funds for the Khmer language dual immersion program at Whittier. Thank you.
My name is Baron Lim. I'm a junior at Milliken High School. This item is not on the agenda for May 26th. Jimmy Psua, Madam President of the LBUSD Board, board members, Superintendent Dr. Jill Baker, and executive staff. Since Long Beach has one of the largest populations of Cambodian people outside of Cambodia, we should work towards implementing a Khmer dual immersion program within LBUSD. Khmer children these days have difficulties expressing themselves to their parents and vice versa. Alongside being limited by cultural and language barriers, allocating a portion of the LCAP budget towards the implementation of the Khmer dual immersion would reduce the gap and help to preserve the language and culture. It would give students like myself the ability to research and understand our past and history written in the Khmer text. Others are in the same situation as myself, not having the opportunity to develop a lot of Khmer language skills, so messages and situations within families are misinterpreted and create this division between our community. Your kind considerations to allocate a portion of the budget to the Khmer Dual Immersion Program at Whittier Elementary School for the next generations are greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Hello, Board President Diana Craighead, Board members, Superintendent Jill Baker, and executive staff. My name is Anthony, an educator for students with disability in Compton Unified. The establishment of the Khmer dual language instruction can allow for students to become competitive in the local, national, and international job market by granting students the ability to read, write, speak, and understand the Khmer language fluently. The students in this program can become translators, civic employees for organizations and companies, healthcare specialists, doctors, educators, and scholars. Please allocate the LCAP budget for the establishment of the Khmer Dual Language Program to give Khmer students the opportunity to become fluent in their language and maintain their history, heritage, and culture. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you. Bye-bye.
This item is not on the agenda for May 26. Hello, Board President Diana Craighead, Member Superintendent Dr. Jill Baker, and Executive Staff. My name is Kita Kung. I am a resident of Long Beach for 40 years, and I see my children are losing their language. I attended the board meeting on October 16, 2019, when parents and community members requested that the Long Beach Unified School District implement the Khmer Dual Language Immersion Program. I attended the workshop on the December 17, 2019, and the community forum on the September 26, 2020, and other meeting. I would like to request that you allocate the LCAP budget for the implementation of the Khmer Dual Immersion Program for our young Khmer children and more Khmer teachers. Thank you very much.
บัดនេះមិនមាននៅក្នុងរបៀបវារៈសម្រាប់ថ្ងៃទី26ខែឧសភានេះទេសូមជម្រាបសួរលោកស្រីប្រធានសមាជិកគណៈកម្មការនិងលោកស្រីអគ្គនាយកនៃសាលារៀនទីក្រុងឡុងបិចព្រមទាំងបុគ្គលិកជាទីគោរពនាងខ្ញុំឈ្មោះរតព្រំជាជីដូនរបស់ចៅពីរនាក់ដែលរៀននៅសាលា Lincoln នាងខ្ញុំមិនចេះភាសាអង់គ្លេសទេហើយមានការពិបាកក្នុងការប្រស្រ័យទាក់ទងជាមួយចៅទាំងពីរនាក់ណាស់នាងខ្ញុំអាចជួយពន្យល់កិច្ចការសាលារៀនដល់គេទាំងពីរនាក់បានខ្លះបើសិនជាគេទាំងពីរនាក់ចេះភាសាខ្មែរហើយនាងខ្ញុំសូមស្នើសុំដល់គណៈកម្មការនៃសាលារៀនទីក្រុងឡុងបិចបែងចែកកញ្ចប់LCAPដើម្បីសម្រាប់បង្កើតកម្មវិធីបង្រៀនភាសាខ្មែរដល់កូនខ្មែរចំនួនក្រោយមានឱកាសរៀននិងយល់អំពីភាសាវប្បធម៌និងប្រវត្តិសាស្ត្រខ្មែរផងដែរនាងខ្ញុំសង្ឃឹមយ៉ាងមុតមមថាលោកស្រីប្រធាននិងគណៈកម្មការនៃសាលារៀនទីក្រុងឡុងបិចនឹងធ្វើការពិចារណាដ៏ជ្រាលជ្រៅចំពោះការស្នើសុំរបស់នាងខ្ញុំនិងមេដាបៃតាដទៃទៀតសូមអរគុណទុកជាមុន
Dear Board President, members of the
Amelia
Board,
Johnson,
Dr. Baker,
item
and
not on the
executive
agenda.
staff. My name is Rod Prum, a grandmother of 2 children at Lincoln Elementary School. I do not speak English and have difficult time in communicating with my 2 grandchildren. I can assist them with some of their schoolwork from school if they speak Khmer. I am asking for the Khmer Language Dual Immersion Program for our youngsters to learn Khmer language, culture, and history. I am very hopeful that the board will think carefully about the proposal from me and other parents.
This is the second request for LBUSD to reconsider and reinstate health education as a high school graduation requirement beginning with the class of 2025. It has been 10 long years since the course was removed as a high school graduation requirement. Prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, data from the California Department of Health and Human Services, the Long Beach Health Department, and LBUSD's own data demonstrate a need for the content and the skills that make up the standards of a comprehensive health education course. A fiscal crisis caused the removal of health education and computer applications from the high school course requirements. But LBUSD now has the funds, the data demonstrates a need, and the pandemic proved not only is computer applications and health education needed, but are essential for our students. And to not require students to take and pass these courses seems a bit irresponsible. Again, please reconsider reinstating health education as a high school graduation requirement. Thank you.
Okay, that concludes the public comment and testimony for items both on the agenda and not listed on the agenda. So next we go to...
Madam President?
Yes.
I'd like to move, if I can get a second, to move those public comments that were listed under items not on the agenda, those that specifically reference the LCAP and the budget, because those are items on our agenda, to place those as a matter of public record under items listed under the agenda, because those comments specifically listed an agenda item that we have for tonight. So I don't know, Brent, how do we do that?
I'm not sure that I'm following the points you're suggesting.
So we just heard
items.
We just heard non-agenda items, but the comments themselves specifically referenced an agenda item. So as a matter of public record, I'd like to move those public comments that specifically referenced an agenda item to the public comments on the agenda.
Sure, you can make that motion, somebody can second, and then there can be a vote on that.
So let me clarify the motion. The motion is to move those comments currently listed as comments on items not on the agenda to comments on items listed on the agenda for those specific comments that reference the agenda item. And several of them, particularly in Kamai, referenced LCAP and budget, and those are items on our agenda.
Second.
Discussion.
And the reason that I support this is because I think that it's entirely possible that somebody may go looking for comments, and if they're not there, they would miss them, and indeed they have to do with an agenda item. So.
Are we in discussion right now?
Yes, we're at discussion. So did you have?
I think Eric did,
Eric
and then I'll
does?
follow up.
Okay, Eric.
Mine was more, I guess, in alignment, and maybe outside of the conversation that we're talking about, but I was a little disappointed with the transcript. Obviously, I know that it's in a different language, and we've been told by the communications staff that it would, it was gibberish to a certain extent. That was the term that was used. And all honesty, obviously, when we have the translation from our Spanish speaking supporters, it's not even added, while we have the Khmer that's completely illegible, which is, I don't even know if it's useful. So I guess my concern is, and I don't even know if it's a question or how we address it, but I don't know the purpose of even putting it in here if it's going to be incoherent. And,
right, and Mr. Miller, you're referring to the written transcripts, okay, but I think that's a separate issue than the motion on the floor, because the motion on the floor has to do with categorizing these public comments as far as, so I think that's a separate conversation.
And I'll agree with you. I guess my point is that I want to make sure that if there's any form of capturing this information, that the incoherent information that we were received is not connected to what we're motioning for today.
And I believe we're going to get written the translations as Board Member Kerr requested, correct?
Ms. Kerr.
Yeah, so this is a paperwork issue that if someone were to request a copy of, or a Public Records Act for the comments on the LCAP, that the ones that specifically mention the LCAP would be in that area, which I don't see a problem with. And I think if we get the translation as done by the translators as the written copy from Letitia, if she's going to provide them to us, I would assume that that could be the translation that's provided in the public record in lieu of the non-legible translations that we received here. Is that my understanding?
Yes, so just a point of clarification, when the contract for this translation services was adopted by the board, that was one of the downsides of this particular company and the amount that we were investing in translation. And so you all requested a courtesy copy, a hard copy of the actual oral translation, in addition to the oral translation that is taking place live in the meeting that has a public record via the video that is posted on our website. So the paper is in addition to, it's still a public record when it is discussed in the public meeting. It's just a different kind of public record. And so I will clarify with the board secretary what to bring in the next meeting so that you have appropriate written transcripts to supplement the actual translation that happens in the board meeting.
Okay.
Which is a separate issue than what Dr. Benitez has proposed.
So just to clarify, and using Mr. Miller's comments, will the public record reflect the written transcripts that we've been given, or more appropriate written transcripts? Because the written transcripts that we have now are not appropriate. I'll just say
they're not a translation of what was spoken into the voice system. And so anything can be a public record. The transcripts that you have today do not appropriately or effectively translate what was spoken, and the translation was done in live session. So
okay, so the appropriate translations will be the ones going into public record and not the ones that we've been given.
Correct, and they were translated live in the meeting, and so that also stands as the public record of the interpretation in language in public.
Okay, Ms. Kerr?
So I don't know if in public record we have that transcript. What we may have is just the name of the person making public comment. So if that's the case, then we would have the names of the people who gave their original comment in Khmer, and I'm happy to support moving those particular commenters' names to the list of people who spoke on items on the agenda, which I think is what Dr. Benitez's motion is that there's a recognition that those folks spoke to the LCAP, which is a budget item, or which is an agendized item. I think it's semantics of whether or not the courtesy copies that we get are part of a public record, or if the video or just the names, as has been done in the past. I think that's just the board secretary and the superintendent maybe could work on that. But moving those people who spoke specifically to the LCAP from a non-agenda item to the agenda item in the minutes, the official minutes of the meeting, or in the record, that's what I'm understanding. I'm happy to support that.
Dr. Benitez.
That's my motion. Just as part of our discussion, in addition to what both board members Otto and Kerr expressed, there's an additional board relevance for us that we can speak to and address public comments on items on the agenda, right? We don't follow the same protocol for public comments on items not on the agenda. So as part of our discussion, we can incorporate public comments on items on our agenda. So there is that layer too, given that the LCAP and the budget are part of our agenda items tonight.
And thank you for adding that part. That's additional clarification. Okay, so all in favor? Dr. Benitez?
Aye.
Ms. Kerr?
Aye.
Mr. Otto?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And I vote aye. So hearing no opposition or abstentions, That motion passes 5-0. Okay, so we are ready to move on to item number 14, staff report. Dr. Baker.
Pleased to introduce staff. Ms. Takahashi is going to kick off this presentation, followed by Mr. Tagorda and myself.
Right. It's my pleasure to kick off this discussion about the Extended Learning Opportunities, our ELO plan, our Local Control Accountability Plan, which is our LCAP, and our Learning Acceleration and Support Plan. And I'll say that though Dr. Baker, Robert Tagorda, and I are presenting this evening, this really represents a deep collaboration amongst departments to bring coherence to the plans and the budgets that we'll be bringing forth to you. So we'll cover these plans with first a discussion on how they fit into the wider context of the district budget, which we will be presenting to you in just a few days, and we'll ask for you to approve in just a few weeks. Here depicts our general fund budget. Our general fund is our main operating fund. It totals approximately $1.123 billion. And our largest and most important source of funding is a local control funding formula, which accounts for almost 70% of our entire general fund budget. It consists of the base grant, which we get funding for every enrolled pupil in our system, and the supplemental and concentration grants, which we get by virtue of our low-income students, our English language learner students, as well as our foster and homeless youth students. And our local control accountability plan is based on this funding, and it really articulates our core instructional program, as well as services and goals and actions for our neediest students. And so as we go up the pyramid, we see other state funding. So that includes funding in programs for special education, money that we receive for instructional materials, but most importantly, for next year, this state funding includes our one-time COVID relief. So in the form of our in-person instruction grants and our extended learning opportunities grant, which amounts to approximately $55 million, and which is before you tonight for approval. The plan for which is before you tonight for approval. So as we go up, we find our federal funding, which includes our traditional title programs. This is our Title I, Title II, Title III programs, Title I being to address the needs of our low-income students, Title II to address teacher quality, and Title III to address the needs of our English language learner students. And most importantly, in our federal funding for next year, as we've talked before, is our federal stimulus dollars that we'll be receiving. We'll be receiving approximately $300 million, which we will spread out over the course of the next 3 years. And we'll be recognizing approximately $70 million in 21-22. And so we'll say that the Learning Acceleration and Support Plan, which is really the district's plan of action for next year, really spans multiple layers of this pyramid. So it's so the local control funding formula supports it, our ELO funding supports it, our federal stimulus dollar supports it, as well as our title funding also supports it, among other resources. So it really spans multiple layers of this pyramid.
Dr. Baker, should we save our questions to the end or as we're going through these? Yeah, can we? I'll hold off if you prefer to go through it, but I jumped ahead and saw the slides.
Oh.
But it's relative to the first slide.
Oh,
my question is relative to the
yes.
first. So I've asked this before. I'm going to see if I can ask it clearer or differently today. I think one of the things that you're talking about, but that it's not reflected in the pyramid, and it would be super helpful for me, and I think for our community members, is I'll take the third layer of the pyramid. State grants and entitlements, $193.6 million. Part of that is the ELO that we'll be taking action on tonight.
That's correct.
And I think I heard you say that part is about $55 million?
Yes.
I think, again, the thing that would be very helpful is if we can see from each of those leaders what part of that is one-time funds, what part of that is ELO, because it does make reference to it in parentheses underneath, but we don't get the amounts as part of the pyramid.
Okay, the total amounts for all the funding that goes into the state
Into
category.
each layer, right?
Yes,
Into each layer.
yes,
Yeah,
okay.
that would be
Yes,
super
we could
helpful
certainly
because
provide that.
there's two ways to read this. So I'm going to provide a rationale. Someone could just say, hey, there's $193.6 million, but not know, okay, what is the ELO part of that? So
Yes.
since we will be voting on the ELO
Right.
tonight, that would be super helpful.
Yes, and I would say that for next year, it's artificially high because we are getting this infusion of one-time dollars.
Right.
So it's very important for us to specify what's ongoing money and what's the one-time money that we
Agreed.
have to support.
That's it in a nutshell.
Yeah. Okay, so just to reiterate, the required plans that the district is required to approve and the board is required to approve. Their local control accountability plans, so it's a condition of receipt of funding of our LCFF for the board to approve. The LCAP, again, the Expanded Learning Opportunities Grant, the $55 million condition of receipt of that funding is an approval of a plan, as well as the single plans for student achievements. Those plans that you see in the instruction report that are very school site specific and really address how specific school sites are addressing the needs of their students with the Title I dollars that they receive. And the plan that is not required is a district learning acceleration and support plan, and that is the district's plan that we're putting forth for our own community and for transparency in terms of the actions that we intend to take to address the needs of our students. So if there are no other questions, I will now turn it over to Mr. Tagorda.
So in the next 4 slides, I'm going to provide a synopsis of the Expanded Learning Opportunities Grant Plan, and also make a reference to the Local Control and Accountability Plan, which, even though the board won't be taking action on tonight, will become part of the public hearing next week, and then will be taken up to the board before the end of June. And I'd like to punctuate a point made by Ms. Takahashi before I go over this particular table, which summarizes the distinctions between the Expanded Learning Opportunities Grant and the Local Control Funding Formula, which is that we wanted to start with the overall district budget because we wanted to begin with an understanding of the overall picture of our financial resources, which we try to maximize in order to support student learning in our schools. And because they come from different funding sources, they have different sets of requirements. And in order for us to maximize the use of these funds, we work with all of the different requirements of each of them in order to support the objectives of the board. So for example, going down this table, focusing on what their intent is, what's required in terms of a plan, stakeholder engagement, and the key dates, we can begin to see the differences, but also the similarities between these two documents. With the ELO, the focus is on supplemental instruction and support. With the local control funding formula, the focus is on unduplicated pupils, low-income students, English learners, foster youth, homeless students. Naturally, there is a convergence between these two purposes, but it's important to keep the distinctions in mind because it informs the way that the plans are shaped. Second, these two funding sources do have a plan template requirement that we must complete, and we must adhere to in order to be compliant and to activate the use of those funds. So you'll notice if you go on the California Department of Education website, there's an actual template for both the ELO grant plan as well as the LCAP. And we make a note of it because when it comes time to audit the use of our resources, that's one of the first things that auditors will look at, whether we completed these plans appropriately. And also, when we submit it to the Los Angeles County Office of Education, for it to become official, in order for us to use the resources, we have to ensure that we're compliant with the plan template. Next, These two funding sources also happen to involve a stakeholder engagement requirement. Not all funds have that requirement, but these two, in fact, do. And it supports the district's purposes because we are able to use the budget engagement process, which we've been engaged in throughout the entire school year, for the purposes of developing the plan. And so all of the questions that we've asked in Thought Exchange, all of the public testimony that we've been provided, all of the community forums that we've engaged in this year, all of the ideas that our community have given to the board for consideration for these plans are indeed part of the stakeholder engagement requirement and helps us fulfill that mandate. Now, in terms of the key dates, there is some similarity, but also some divergences, right? So with the Expanded Learning Opportunities Grant, we posted that in mid-May. We don't have a public hearing requirement for it, but the board did have consideration of it in the last meeting and are now therefore able to approve that plan in this meeting if it suits the purposes of the board. The deadline for submission to LA County Office of Education is June 1, so we're going to be in compliant if, in fact, it is approved by the board. LCFF has a slightly different requirement in that there is a public hearing component. So next week, when we come together for the public hearing, you will see the LCAP introduced formally to the public, even though it's already been posted and has been on lbschools.net since April 15. That April 15 deadline is not a requirement of the education code, but it is something that we do in concert with our community partners who believe, and rightfully so, that having the document in the public purview affords an opportunity for stakeholders to provide meaningful feedback. After the public hearing, there is then approval by the board on June 23. And the deadline for the LCAP, as it is every year, is on June 30, 2021, in conjunction with the overall district budget.
Super helpful, Mr. Tagorda. Just one question. It may be a semantics question. Mm-hmm. So even though there was no public hearing required for the ELO grant, and the deadline is June 1st, given that we just added this board meeting, was the original plan for us to have approved at the prior meeting, or when would this plan have been approved if we didn't have this meeting today?
The board could have considered it for action on May 13, 2021. It didn't require that the board receive the plan and then have a separate board meeting for approval. We would have been within the purview of being able to approve the plan in the same meeting as when it's first presented. But we had the opportunity to be able to have two different meetings, and so took it as a way to enable further discussion by the board and the public.
Perfect. Thank you.
I think it's also important to note for the public that while we had received notice that we were going to receive these funds, the template was not provided to districts until May 1. In other words, the plan that we had to put together within a short amount of time. And so it's a tribute, obviously, to the district that we had been working on the budget engagement process, and we were prepared to activate the use of these funds in short notice, and then been able to take a look at the entire plan holistically, namely the Learning Acceleration and Support Plan, and be able to say what would be most appropriately funded by the ELO grant, and how can that grant support those services.
Thank you, Mr. DeGordon. Thanks for the clarifying question, Dr. Baker, because I think it's important for also our community members to know if we just got the template in May, right? And that's where I was coming from, like, okay, the June 1st deadline, how would we have met that if we didn't have this additional meeting, given that we just got the template and that template needs to be populated? Yep. But as you eloquently shared, because we were already in our budget engagement process, we could move that data and information into this template.
Correct. And the other thing I'd note is that districts are not required. Unlike with the LCAP, districts, it's not built into the ed code that districts are required to post the ELO grant fund plan on the district website. We basically followed the same protocol we would use for the LCAP with the ELO grant plan to try to make it aligned with the overall processes for board consideration. And so that throughout the budget conversation that we're engaged in right now, you can see how it connects with everything else that we're doing, as opposed to it being a completely separate funding source.
Thank you. Super helpful in clarifying the difference.
Okay, so now in these next three slides, we're going to summarize some of the key items that are contained within each of these plans. I won't go over in great detail what's in the LCAP because it's going to be discussed at next week's public hearing, but I did want to shed some light on how the district has already attempted to respond to feedback from the community. And you actually heard a little bit more of the sentiments that we've seen throughout the 2 different occasions when we've had thought exchanges and received over 5,000 different comments, 5,000 participants, and then 2,000 participants again in the thought exchange that we recently coordinated. The 2 community forums that we've had related to the local control and accountability plan, which we've organized with our community partners, and all of the public testimony that's been provided to the district throughout the entire course of the school year. All of that, alongside meetings that we've had with the Superintendent Advisory Committee, the District English Learner Advisory Committee, the District Community Advisory Committee, the Special Education Community Advisory Committee, our Coalition of Involved African American Parents, our Pacific Islander Education Voyage, our Educational Opportunities for Native Americans Parent Group. All of these different stakeholder groups who have, at any given point in time, provided the district with feedback. We've taken it into consideration and sought to respond to it through our various plans. And as it turns out, with the LCAP itself, there are some really key ones that were highlighted during public testimony today that we're really happy to report is going to be in the next draft of the LCAP. We've already built it in and budgeted it out, and you will see it as part of the public hearing next week on June 2. Namely, and it aligns with the first pillar of the Learning Acceleration and Support Plan, which Dr. Baker will describe in greater detail after my part of the presentation. The culturally relevant and responsive curriculum, we've allocated $3 million of planned expenditures in the LCAP just for that action/service. Naturally, that's not the only place where we've got culturally responsive or culturally relevant actions and services, but we have certainly allocated a proportion of our LCAP funds to support that work here. High school wellness centers was another really critical point of feedback by members of the community to address social emotional learning and the mental health wellness of our students. Foster youth support has always been in the LCAP because it is a requirement of the LCAP. But we have expanded support for foster youth and are adding staff to support our foster youth in order to meet the needs that they have during the post-pandemic world. And then the last 2 items that you see here, which we've aligned with the 3rd pillar of our Learning Acceleration and Support Plan, which focuses on engagement and student voice, are the Black Student Achievement Initiative to the tune of $750,000 and language accessibility to the tune of $1 million. We've heard time and again the importance of equity and having our plans be centered around equity, specifically supporting those who have historically been marginalized. These are 2 attempts for the district to ensure that we do right by our students. Note that all of the other services that are in the LCAP and in all of our other budget resources naturally support our Black students and our English learners. But these are on top of the services that they would have otherwise received because we know how important it is to meet their needs during this particular time.
Before you move on, I just wanted to state that I'm very happy to see we've included culturally relevant and responsive curriculum to the tune of $3 million, and the high school wellness centers, because these are a couple of things that our stakeholders have been talking about. We just heard all that public comment on how people want us to include these things in the budget. So with this allocation for the high school wellness centers, will this ensure that each of the high schools have a wellness center? I'm getting nods from Dr. Camarino. Okay, so each of our high schools will have a wellness center. That is great news. Thank you very much.
One other note I will make on the Black Student Achievement Initiative and the language accessibility. In the plan, you will note that it doesn't detail what those additional services will be. That is because we believe very strongly that student voice and community voice should help shape what those additional programs ought to be to support our Black Student Achievement Initiative and our language accessibility work. So we will be convening an advisory committee and or focus groups that can help inform what those additional and supplemental programs ought to be. But we have allocated the resources already for those purposes.
Ms. Kerr, sorry.
Yes, so just for the clarification, they will see, folks, it is not currently in the draft that is online, but will be in time for the next board meeting and for public review. So on those items, what I hear you saying is that those will be just really non-specific, just a budgetary item to be further discussed later. And we can talk about what that committee looks like. We'll make sure to have information for folks who really want to participate in that quickly available, hopefully in the next couple of weeks as well. Is that my understanding? So when they see it, they're not going to see the specifics. Is that correct?
They will see it almost like how this is, but we do connect it with the equity initiatives that the district currently has. So for example, there's a learning acceleration and support initiative. There is a curriculum and professional development initiative, a social emotional learning initiative, all of which have an equity center around them. And so we've certainly connected it with that, but you won't see specific details that incorporate everything that you might with an action plan.
And also understanding the needs, what we might find from community is that the needs in different parts of the city and at different school communities are different, and what they would like to see done at their school community may vary based on the very specific region or needs of their school site. So it might not be the exact same program at each school site. It may be based very specifically on needs. Correct?
Yes, it could be.
Dr. Benitez.
I appreciate Board Member Kerr's question and clarification, so I think it's super important to hear that, Mr. Tagorda. The flip side of it is, as you connected it with the public comments that we heard today, folks are talking about, and I'm hearing, and I'm sure my colleagues are hearing about lack of transparency on the budget. Why isn't it there? So, the flip side of this is, it's good to hear, we get a public affirmation for it, but, it does mean something to community when something is explicitly in a, formal document that we're adopting and something is being referenced as that'll be a part of this larger category. So I'm wondering if there's a compromise in between, right? That you just shared that this work is connected to our Black Student Achievement Initiative. Is that wording already in the LCAP? And okay.
Yes.
So maybe explicitly saying this will be connected to that, although it's yet to be determined. It'll be nuanced by grade level, by school site, and I would suggest the same, even if it's just a placeholder, that this will be part of our language accessibility, to be determined. Are emerging bilingual to be determined? So in the past, what I've appreciated in the drafts that you shared with us is that you do have like placeholders either highlighted or things that come. I think it would be helpful if we could have at least that, right? Even if the specifics aren't there, that at least when we share with community, we can say, there it is, right? That's what we're naming it that. Versus it being sort of this broad culturally relevant and responsive curriculum. That makes sense, but sort of what falls under there as examples.
Thank you.
And I would also just like to add that it is important for these expenditures to be discussed in a public way so that people know what the plan is. And I understand we're not going to be doing that this evening, but just for future reference, that is important for people to hear how these funds are going to be used. So if we could do that in a future meeting, I think that would be helpful. But again, I just want to reiterate, it's so nice to see these things that are obviously important to our stakeholders being listed and spelled out right in front of me. And it shows me that our stakeholder input is very valuable, that it is being put to use, and that our values align with the values of our communities. So thank you again. Mr. Miller.
I just had one question, and allow me to learn as I'm here and still growing in this position and learning how things are functioning within the district here. You stated earlier that the language accessibility and the Black Student Achievement Initiative are components of the district that have not been fully developed yet, but are going to be components of the LCAP, correct?
Correct.
Well, if they haven't been fully developed, then how did we decide on which dollar amount should be designated to each subject?
Yes.
So I think what you should know is these are additional allocations above and beyond the supplements that are already in the LCAP. And as we go through this meeting and the next couple of meetings and you start to see the whole plan, it is the opportunity to, based on feedback, look at our LCAP and make adjustments in what we used to fund in the LCAP, taking that input and then thinking about an investment in a new way. And so how did we get to this amount? We looked at what we could take out of the LCAP, because this is replacing, there's not more money in the LCAP, it's replacing, and looking at other funding sources for things that were in the LCAP to make these additional investments that are here. And so these are things that the $750,000 for the Black Student Achievement Initiative that will be guided by an advisory may lead us to additional investment. It may be something that we say this year we actually are spending more time studying and we're not going to use this whole amount. But for now, we're making the investment in the LCAP so that we can build into the LCAP with input. Similarly with language accessibility, we have an idea, a vision of expanding the way our community accesses both schools and information from the district, and putting this as an investment to build a plan with focus group input and stakeholder input, so that we're not just coming out and saying, here is the plan. We have a lot of input from the community, but we're going to shape it with input from others that really have a lot to say about how to make things better in the district with these topics in mind. So they may lead to additional investments, but for now, this is what we're able to take out or find other resources to place things that were in the LCAP with these investments.
I believe Mr. Otto, after.
Does that, Mr. Miller, does it answer your question?
Yeah, and I was just curious about the adjustment time. So you're saying that potentially with future investments in either one of these topics, for example, are you saying that those further investments would happen in a future school year, or is this something that can be adjusted within this school year?
It's a good question. So when we think of all of the budgets that we're interacting with right now and why we have a district learning acceleration and support plan, that is also a way for us to think of the whole of our investment. So if there's something that's coming out of LCAP that we also can use other resources for. We may expand it in through other resources. We may pair resources that have not been used in tandem before because we have so many new resources. So anything that would change in the LCAP would come back to you for approval. But we may be able to make an investment in another way based on work that we're doing through the LCAP.
Mr. Otto?
Sure. Yeah, I was having some trouble figuring out what was where and where. It's like a soup. We've got all these things that we're talking about. We only have one action item tonight. You want to take this off? And in looking at that and listening to some of the comments, I too had noticed when I read the materials before tonight that there was no specific mention in the Expanded Learning Opportunities grant plan for math. And I didn't know whether there was a reason for that or it just hadn't been done or what. And whether it's coming in or, I mean, it can't come in under the Expanded Learning Opportunities grant after tonight, I would assume, in terms of what we're asking for. So that's a very specific question. Go ahead.
So I think what's not there are some of the specifics. So when we talk about extended learning time or tutoring, the references that are more generalized in the ELO, when they actually come to fruition, they will be tutoring that's specific to the needs of students. And that is localized down to the school level, as well as the district level. So, and I guess just to be really even more specific, Mr. Otto, we have plans to actually put out an RFP, a request for proposals for high dose tutoring, as was referred to in public comment. That's not something that we've done before, but it's a way for us to provide the public clear information about the tutoring that we hope to do for our students. An RFP will allow us to describe the kinds of tutoring that we'd like people to write proposals for. Those proposals then get vetted before they are used in schools. And so that terminology, high dose tutoring, has a lot attached to it. It has the frequency of tutoring that happens, and it also, when you use that terminology, has a specific research base to it. And I think that that's something that the public has made many statements about, wanting to make good investments with this money. And a way for us to manage that in a large school district is to put out an RFP and then allow our schools to know what has been vetted through that process that has the foundation of those high dose tutoring elements.
Okay, that's very helpful. In the document that we got, the 19-page document about the Expanded Learning Opportunities Grant Plan, there were, I mean, when I mentioned the language development plan, that was specifically discussed, but there was nowhere that the math was. At least, I mean, it was a little hard to tell because of what the categories were. I didn't know whether it was elementary school, middle school, high school, and then there were things underneath that. But I mean, I get it that something's going to be done about that.
Mr. Otto, can I suggest that we save the questions for later on in the presentation, or is that okay? Would that be okay with you?
Sure, okay, sure.
Okay, thank you. And Dr. Benitez, did you have a question for Dr. Baker?
I'll save it for after as well.
Okay, thank you.
So that was a really important pause around the LCAP. And so now Robert's going to take you into specifically the ELO plan. So now we're shifting into a $55 million required plan in a template that is provided for us that we have to complete and submit to the state. Back to you, Mr. DeGorda.
Yeah, what Dr. Baker just mentioned, I think, is really important to remember. So if we start back to that pyramid of the large district budget that we have, within it are the state grants, and within that are the ELO grants, which consist of a $55 million allocation into the district, which is what you see on this table. And what we had to do in order to activate this, the use of this particular funding source, is to design a plan that addressed the specific categories that are required by the ELO grant. And the categories include extended instructional learning time, accelerating progress to close learning gaps, integrated student supports, access to technology, supports for credit-deficient students, additional academic services, and training for school staff. And we've provided in this slide the same table that can be seen in the actual ELO grant plan that breaks down all of the resources associated with this grant. Next slide, please. So then, the natural question is to ask what are some of the actual services that are included in the ELO grant plan. And you can see how they connect in this particular slide. We're focusing specifically on the Pillar 1 services and actions because that's what Dr. Baker will be describing as it relates to the Learning Acceleration and Support Plan. But you'll notice as well that the other pillars are also covered by this plan in some way, shape, or form within the confines of the $55 million allocation to the district. As it relates to extended instructional learning time, that's where you'll see things like Saturday school, for example. Before school, after school, conference period intervention courses. So an intervention course that is not during the school day, but that occurs, for example, during zero period, so that students can have an expanded learning opportunity in order to recoup learning loss, for example. With accelerating progress to close learning gaps, you'll see that's where the TK through 3 literacy intervention is. Targeted additional classroom teachers, which effectively helps to lower class sizes. And then the high school student success initiative. And then down the line, you'll see supports for credit deficient students. That's where summer school is. And training for school staff. There's a culturally relevant and responsive pedagogy there. So you'll notice the one commonality that you can see from the LCAP and the ELO grant is the culturally relevant and responsive pedagogy and curriculum. And it's because it's funding 2 different parts of the same initiative, right? Again, this is a great example, I think, of the district trying to maximize the use of all of the funds that we're receiving, since it permits us to use the ELO grant plan to support something like promoting culturally relevant and responsive pedagogy. We're using this particular resource to help pay for some parts of that initiative, while at the same time we're also using the LCAP to pay for another part of the initiative. And I know that it gets a little bit complicated for members of the public because they're having to deal with multiple plans. But this is something that local educational agencies have to do in order to maximize the use of these resources that we receive, because they have different restrictions and different requirements and different time horizons and different ways that you can use them.
So let's pause there for a moment and see if there are any questions specific to just the initial information that you saw about the LCAP. And I believe that the revised LCAP from the initial posting on April 15th will be loaded to the district website tomorrow, and has been, as has been the way that Mr. Tagorda has authored it in the past. Will you be putting the highlights, Mr.
Yes.
Tagorda? Okay, so it will have highlights that show the change from the April 15th draft to incorporate the things that you saw on the slide, with just highlights of ways that feedback had been incorporated that you saw on slide 5. So that will be posted tomorrow. So 2 required plans that we just reviewed. We talked about LCAP, and then the discussion about the ELO, as it is informally called. Are there any questions about those required plans?
Dr. Benitez.
I think, Mr. Otto, did you want to ask? I was going to come in after you.
Go ahead, I'll
Okay.
come after you.
So one question and one just clarifying, or actually I want to reiterate something that I heard that I think is very important. what is between now and June 2nd, and then on June 2nd, there'll be the public hearing for the LCAP, and then the last meeting in June will adopt. What would we say to community members right now, given that there'll be at least 2 iterations of a draft, right? One getting posted, I just heard right now, and then one that will get posted after our June 2nd public hearing with any additional revisions or what have you. What would we say what would be a good thing for us to communicate to community members in terms of the input? So input between now and June 2nd, input at the public hearing on June 2nd, and then for final adoption at the end of June. And it's an open question to our team here. And then I have a second follow-up after that.
So as it relates to the June 2 public hearing, there will be a new version of the draft being posted on lbschools.net in preparation for the public hearing that reflects all of the all of the revisions that we've discussed here today. For example, the Black Student Achievement, they will see that there's a specific section that's going to talk about that. And all of the recommendations that we've gotten from the community before today, basically, up to and including the District English Learner Advisory Committee stakeholder meeting that we had on Monday. Thereafter, we will receive some additional feedback during the public hearing, naturally. We also have a form that we utilize on lbschools.net that people can complete. As they provide emails to staff and other testimonies leading up to the 23rd meeting, those will also be incorporated into the plan. So there are multiple ways in which the public can continue to be engaged in this process so that by the June 23 meeting, when the board takes it up for consideration, it will reflect all of the additional feedback from the community between June 2 and June 23.
Thank you, Mr. Tagorda. So I would encourage, as we're presenting on June 2nd and then at that 23rd meeting, Dr. Baker, you did it. I was going to ask, and then you did it in your response to Mr. Otto. It's real helpful not to go into all the details, right? Because these plans are very comprehensive. But when we cover sort of broad areas like we did today, if we could use like one illustrative example, right? So Mr. Otto asked the question, and then you gave the example of this RFP very specifically that's going out for a ramped up tutoring. I think that would be helpful. So I would just encourage our team, whoever's presenting and sharing this information, not to go through all the details, but provide sort of one highlight or exemplary case or activity or service or program. In the past, for instance, so you referred to our high school student success initiative. Dr. Camarino talked about We Rise, right? So if that's something that's either additionally funded or ramped up funding, that way, those are like the sticking ones to me, right? Like, okay, I can talk about that specific thing in addition to everything else, but I think that would be helpful, not as more work, but just as you're covering these to say, here's one specific concrete example, right, in this area. So I guess my question is, now that we know the ELO, and we'll be obviously taking action on that tonight, can you point to an example, Mr. Tagorda or Dr. Baker team, of what's not in the ELO that would be, as an example, in the LCAP or in the superintendent's new vision around learning acceleration and support?
I'm going to share a couple of those examples in my part.
Okay, perfect.
Mr. Otto, did you have questions? And then Ms. Kerr.
Thank you. Just a couple specific questions about the expanded learning opportunities grant plan. And some of this was, it talks on page 9 about curriculum and professional development, and it talks about the 8 competencies for culturally responsive teaching and ensure a culturally relevant curriculum. What are the 8 competencies? What document does that come out of, or what? I mean, I know it exists, but I...
Yeah. Dr. Kale, do you want to talk about those 8 competencies briefly?
Yeah.
Well, I didn't come prepared to talk about the 8 competencies in depth. I don't have the document in front of me.
Okay.
But what they essentially do is they define what teachers need to know and be able to do in order to have culturally responsive classrooms. So we're using that framework to help guide our work in developing all of the training. And then in also helping our administrators know when they go into classrooms what it is that they're looking for.
Good. Okay. Great. And I can find it later. I just didn't know exactly what that was. And then on page 12, this is the expenditure plan. And I was just curious, we've got very, very specific dollar figures as the planned expenditures. And how do you construct those? I mean, I know that it's a work in progress and that you don't really know, but I'm just very interested in how one is $2 million and one is $23 million.
Yeah. Ms. Arcus, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes, I can. The dollars are constructed with information from all of the executive staff as we build the plan. So for example, they may say that we're going to hire X amount of teachers, and we have an average cost teacher in our district. Mm-hmm. So we utilize average costs because we don't know who we're going to get or what we're going to get in that area. Gotcha. And then we also have gotten information from exec staff regarding regarding materials or supplies or contracts that we may be entering into or that we have entered into the past. So we use a lot of information from developing who the staff is, what level we'll be using in regards to staffing, in regards to when we have hourly rates, we'll use hourly rates regarding extra teaching staffing or extra hourly, and then we'll utilize supply budgets or contracts based on some previous history that we've had.
Okay, great, thank you.
You're welcome.
And then my third of 5 questions was on page 17, it talks under physical requirements. It says that the LEA must use at least 85% of its apportionment for expenditures related to providing in-person services. Can you tell me is that new teachers? I assume that it's a variety of things, but I'm just curious as to how we do that.
Renee.
I can take that as well. Actually, most of our plan is in anticipation of in-person services for next year. So while we must use up to 85%, practically 100% of the services that we're offering, including our summer schools, our Saturday school, a lot of our initiatives are going to be in person. So the plan is that we will obviously reach that 85% without fail.
And Mr. Otto, I would just add that it's the state's way of prioritizing the return to in-person instruction and in-person services.
Yeah. Well, that leads to my 4th question, which is the last bullet under fiscal requirements, which says up to 15% can be used for distance learning thing. And do we have a specific distance learning plan? Are we acknowledging that we're going to have distance learning going on? Is that a decision that's been made, or is that a placeholder for the decisions that are going to be made?
So we're still working on a plan for distance learning and determining what kinds of services in the district would be provided. But what this describes is that you can use up to that 15%.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Okay. I didn't know whether it meant that we made some decisions about whether that happens. I know that that's a controversial subject, and so that's good to know.
That's
and then
a good question.
My last specific question about this particular plan is on the last page, which is page 19, and it just says a description of how these funds are being coordinated with the federal elementary and secondary school emergency relief funds. Is that a work in progress because we don't know what that's going to be exactly, or do we?
Hi, Mr. Otto. Actually, that is, I should have sat in front of you tonight. Actually, that is exactly what we did, and we've talked about it a lot tonight. We've utilized all the resources. So in particular, we are going to be providing information, LCAP, ESSER, base grant, all of those resources are kind of intertwined, and this is one of the components where they've asked that we indicate that. So where you've seen like literacy teachers or literacy expansion, you're going to see that in some of our ESSER programs and some of our federal emergency relief programs, and you're also going to see it in the ELO. You'll see it kind of intertwined with other areas, such as our intervention coordinators. They're going to be funded by the ELO and possibly funded by ESSER in the future. So it's all a way that we can maximize our dollars and intertwine our programs to provide the best support for students.
Great, thank you. Those are my specific questions.
Thank you. Ms. Kerr?
You know, in flipping through the slides to come, I'm going to wait and do my questions after Dr. Baker, because I think there's a teaser of some of the things I was going to ask. So if I could, I'll just queue up again after. Thank you.
Okay, so we are going to proceed and now stepping away from required plans and going back into our district learning acceleration and support plan. And you'll remember this slide.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Jill. I did have one comment on the last slide before you went through. And mine's is actually very, very general. It was actually just doing quick math in my head. I'm recognizing that we're going to be spending a little bit shorter than about 12% of this $55 million towards what I would consider academic intervention, right? Where when we talk about extending learning times, we're talking about credit recovery. And so that, having the presence of mind to do that in the midst of a lot of the public comment that we've received, I think is a very smart and strategic approach. So I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Good, thank you. And it's actually with the detail, it actually becomes more than that. But thank you for acknowledging that's really, really important.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, it's okay. So as we head into the Learning Acceleration and Support Plan, just a reminder, this is a slide from last week about the why of this plan. And I think this is a great discussion tonight that really helps us to think holistically about the needs of our students and how we plan to meet the needs of our students. This plan, the Learning Acceleration and Support Plan, incorporates stakeholder input, and in many cases it incorporates a way to fund things that cannot be funded in other resources or that the LCAP is complete. It has everything in it that we can afford in the LCAP, in the ELO, and now we're to the Learning Acceleration and Support Plan. It builds coherence across multiple resources. So it's not just one strand of money. It's not a finite amount, taking, for example, $55 million in the ELO and then allocating it. This starts with a plan, which is based on our students' data and our improvement efforts, and then it takes the resources and braids them together so that we can meet the needs of our students. This plan, and I'll go on, actually, let me share this. So this has been said in many different ways, but I think these circles tell a story that is really important for us to remember. So this plan uses all kinds of resources, and I think the difference in thinking that we want you to see tonight is that we've talked about, in terms of compliance-driven plans, dividing up a finite set of money and a plan that is nimble. It allows for ongoing incorporation of feedback. It allows us to study our own efforts inside the district, expand them, decrease them over the few years that this plan will exist. And so these resources, this is an important aspect of how we think of resources working in concert with one another in service to the aspirations that we have for our students. Also, last week, I named aspects of how we developed this plan, the context for it, a research base and the use of many research-based resources. I shared that I'm serving on the Funds Optimization Task Force for the Council of Great City Schools. We have senior staff serving in many different committees in national presence and working with local partners, such as you heard many of our students from Californians for Justice and our partners and staff speak tonight about their desires. It also includes the LCAP work group, a group that we have worked very closely with over several years' time around our LCAP, some of whom spoke tonight in public comment, but others whose input is reflected in the Learning Acceleration and Support Plan, not because it's required, because it's how we want to work with our community. And so you'll remember these 4 pillars. It's important tonight. This is the second of 4 sessions. The first session, Yumi and I did an overview of the plan, the scope of the plan, and really wanted to center you around these 4 pillars. Tonight I'm going to speak and just give you a little more depth around pillar 1. Next week, we will talk about social emotional learning and wellness and engagement and voice. And then the June 23rd meeting will talk about infrastructure for the future. This is also not a plan that has a state deadline. It has a district deadline. It's the way we want to be public with our work. It's the way we will start the year. And our commitment is that by August 1st, this will be a public-facing plan that can be accessed in its entirety in its first draft on the district website. So for tonight, I'm just going to spend a few minutes giving you some examples. You have a couple of resources. You have a printout of Pillar 1 as it stands right now in hard copy that should accompany the slides that I'm going to use. So a couple things I want you to think about as we're talking about, or as I'm talking about Pillar 1. Pillar 1 is focused on strengthening of the district's core program. Some things that I think about when I think of the core program, I think of the student experience. That student experience happens in classrooms. It also happens around a school. So we are talking about some enhancement and redesign of curriculum. So you've heard about the curriculum audit. That is something that we have made an investment in and will continue to make a significant investment in. It also means enhancing instructional delivery, and especially in light of the fact that our students are coming back, many of whom have not been in a school building when they return for a year and a half. And so it is not because educators don't know how to teach students, it's because we have greater needs, and it's time for us to enhance the way that we deliver instruction. It's also acknowledging that a lot of students have not done well over time in our district. There have been harms, there have been inequities that have been created because of our programming, and we aim to improve that through this and to acknowledge that not all students have done well, and it's an opportunity for us to make a big investment in doing better and seeing our students to greater improvement. So the first is strengthening the core in Pillar 1. The second is tiered academic supports. It's important that those two things go together. If you spend all your money on interventions and the money doesn't last, but you have not improved the core program, you have not done well by your students. If you only focus on the core program and some students need additional support, we call it Tier 2, Tier 3 support in a multi-tiered system, then you have not done well by students. So it is the pairing of improving a core instructional program with high quality interventions that meet the needs of a variety of students that we aim to address in this plan. So I want to give you a few examples of what that looks like. So the public will have a screenshot of your first page that's in front of you, and I just want to highlight a couple of things. You are welcome, as I finish talking, you're welcome to ask specific questions about anything you see in front of you, and I'll invite our team to answer the specifics that apply to either something that they're responsible for or something that they is coming out of their office. So this plan will first address TK through 12th grade core academic program enhancements. And because it's been a topic of communication tonight, the first 2 items that you'll see that are for our entire system of teachers is culturally relevant and responsive pedagogy, so the professional development of all teachers and administrators outside of duty time, and culturally relevant and responsive curriculum, which relates to the audit, and an investment in taking the recommendations from the audit and spending funds that we have available in LCFF to purchase materials and to supplement what we have known as the curriculum with an investment. So I highlight these 2 because they also give you a glimpse at how this is a plan that then braids resources in service to what we want for our students, the enhancement of our core curriculum, and then the interventions to go with it. So this is an example. You can see others. You can see a new commitment or an enhanced commitment to English learner support, a K-12 writing initiative. On the first page, you see the grade 4-5 unit redesign, which is about enhancing the core curriculum as well. When you move to the next page, specific to elementary, transitional kindergarten through 5th grade, now I'm thinking about support. So we're improving a core program, and now I'll share a couple of things for interventions to support students. So in the elementary years, you can see all the way to the right, that cost estimate of about $21 million. Below it, Renee put in so that you can start to see the breakout of how things are braided together to create a program that supports students, not just create a funding source. So there you'll see a commitment of LCFF, the plan that you'll be approving, and in the ELO for a total of $21 million. This is the district's new literacy intervention program that will be across all elementary sites. That is has a research base to it. It includes training for teachers, it includes new materials, and it's a new way of thinking about literacy support for our high need students across the entire district. And you can glance down there, you'll see math intervention. That was, there were some questions in the ELO, but you can see additional resources for math intervention. As you glance down under TK through 5th grade supports, you'll see instruction and intervention coordinators. That also has a mathematics aspect to it. And so there are certain interventions that look like they may be more specific to English language arts, but actually include mathematics support in them as well. As you look at 6th through 8th grade, if you look in the 4th section down, actually there's several aspects of math there, but in 6th through 8th grade support, you'll see a very different way of monitoring. So this support includes working on improvement of Tier 1 instruction, which is the instruction that every student gets, and then coordination of intervention. So oftentimes a busy school staff, they're providing interventions. This is going to enhance their ability to monitor with data, for a coordinator to work with a teacher side by side, looking at that data and thinking about the success of that student relative to the intervention that is being provided. And glad I chose a math to highlight in 9 through 12. So you can see here two things that go together, the enhancement of algebra and geometry through an intervention, and then also some work that the high school office and the 612 math curriculum office will be doing together to provide a specific course for students who have struggled in algebra, which is called Agile Minds. And then as you glance down that page, you can see the high school student success initiative, which Dr. Benitez, you named earlier, that includes math collaborative work. We have a history in our district of having intervention and support through a model of math collaborative. The high school student success initiative also includes female and male academies, and then as you named, the We Rise curriculum. So that involves a number of additional staff that will provide that targeted support. And then you see tutoring, Saturday school, will make an investment relative to academics in additional college and career staff that will help the current college and career centers to have a greater connection to HBCUs, the historically black colleges and universities, by helping them to build an infrastructure within their college and career centers to have that connection. So if and when the money goes away, the infrastructure that has built in the existing college and career centers. So I'll pause there, just a reminder, there's much more to share, but tonight is around the academic acceleration and supports. Next week is social emotional learning. And in our last presentation in June, we will talk about the infrastructure for the future. So I will take any questions, and I'll welcome you to ask staff who are around me who have put a lot of work into thinking and reviewing research and making many contributions to this plan that we will all be a part of in the days ahead.
Dr. Benitez.
I think Board Member Kerr said that she would queue her questions, so I don't mind going after you.
Thank you. Thank you for the specifics. I know when we talk about line items that are huge, we all don't necessarily picture what that means. I knew when we talked about extra class time for instruction, I knew because of one of my students' experience that he took a 0-period algebra development course because he was struggling. And so that was a whole extra class of math. So I know I had a different perspective reading some of those because I'd experienced some of them. And so I'm grateful for Pillar 1. I am really excited to share the rest of it over the next couple of weeks because I will always try to speak from the place. This is my understanding of what's in front of me. It's so incredibly well thought out. And so my experience in working with Educare as a unique financial institution that's part of the district, that idea that we've talked about for years of braiding and blending of funding, and that we know that every child in the seat isn't funded from one place, that there's multiple streams of funding that go into that little one's understanding of the world that day. And this is, all of these pieces show us that any student in a classroom is being funded from multiple places, and I would attribute that to Yumi and her staff being able to look at those dollars, look at the requirements of those dollars, the reporting needs of those dollars, and to really utilize in the best way possible those dollars. And so it becomes this big pie where we're taking from one but putting something else in its place in order to really maximize those dollars. And I appreciate that folks would love to see it all in one document. I would imagine that'd be 4 reams of paper if we printed out what that might look like. So I thank you for the specific clarity around the pillars in the acceleration and support plan.
Ms. Kerr, may I also just comment, you've heard from Renee and from Yumi tonight. This is really different work than happens in most districts. And so this way that our team works together in terms of thinking about our student needs, and what's different about this plan is it starts with needs, and then our business staff says, let's look at how we can fund that, what you want to do. And so it has really changed the conversation about how do you create a plan. And so I just want to acknowledge, and of course, Yumi and Renee represent others who work with them, but they have just been really incredible support to the academic side of the house in thinking about how to do what you just described.
And I think that when we talk about a Black Student Initiative that we talked about earlier and what that's going to look like as we co-create that with community members, understanding that our math collaborative has been doing some of that work. So now we enhance that in a new way. And as you said, it's additional dollars to support that. So I'm thrilled to see the piece around the HBCU College and Career Specialists. I know we have more and more students looking at that opportunity. And we had a couple kids that we met at Jordan the other night who are attending HBCUs. And I someday would love to see us connect with an HBCU or two and see if we can figure out some kind of college promise. I know there's dozens and dozens. I think there's maybe 90 to choose from. But again, that's a change that is fundamental to how we talk about college and career, especially at certain campuses. And I know we'll talk more about the Jordan and Cabrillo High School's transformation support, but a really exciting opportunity again to co-create with those communities specific programs that will support the work that will support students at those sites. So that's what I have for now. I appreciate the clarification on some of the specifics, so my questions were a little different.
Dr. Benitez.
Thank you. So 2 questions, Dr. Baker, for you and or the team. And I appreciate hearing from everyone's on their toes after they started getting picked on in class. So I've been hearing a lot of excitement, a lot of buzz around our SEAL program this summer for K4. I did see, and again, a lot of detail here, reference to expanded APEX for 6th through 8th graders. Could we talk a little bit more about where summer interventions for learning acceleration for our students that need help academically show up? And then question number 2 is, one thing I didn't see that I think is super important explicitly to hit on supporting our students with disabilities, right? Whether, again, rec aides, occupational therapists, speech pathologists. I'm sorry, I said aides. I said rec aides, but I meant aides. So if we could talk about where that is and or what our plans are for our students with disabilities within this context.
I can start off by just giving you an update on where we are with our summer SEAL planning and preparation. So we're offering a SEAL program at all of our MSK8 sites. Brian and Jay can elaborate on their specific level programs. But at the MSK8 level, every one of our sites has a summer SEAL program. At the middle school level, that includes intervention in mathematics. At the elementary level, intervention in both reading and mathematics. We are offering an intervention course in writing as well for students, as well as a wide range of enrichment courses to really entice students to participate in a summer program. That could include anything from coding, robotics, art classes, additional science exploration programs. In addition, we are supporting 2 outside programs. We have our ABC program supported through Dramatic Results that we are continuing this summer for incoming 6th grade students, GATE identified students as an enrichment. In addition, we are offering a summer STEAM program at 10 of our school sites. We are projecting at minimum 3,000 students participating, upwards of 5,000 depending on how many students we can actually attract into the program. So our schools are in the process right now of advertising their summer programs, reaching out to families, offering those enrichments. These are all in-person opportunities. In addition to that, we are offering an online through Apex intervention course. This is intervention courses in both reading and math that is obviously digital for families that want to take advantage of that program. It incorporates an online assessment into the course, allowing students to move up or down in the intervention or tutoring in the program that they're participating in. So it's not a traditional Apex course that has a full curriculum. It's an abbreviated intervention program that really allows students to either review previous coursework or preview upcoming coursework. So I'm going into algebra and I want to leg up around that algebra course. I can take a preview algebra course for the summer. Likewise, I just finished a Math 7 course and I'm not super comfortable with what I covered this year. Let me review that content, just as an example. So this will be an online intervention opportunity for students, as well as then the in-person 4-week intervention that we're offering. The in-person program is a three-hour program with 3 courses, generally speaking, across our school sites. The summer STEAM program is a 6-hour program, and we are also offering a WRAP program for additional support for families that need childcare. So a pretty comprehensive 4-week program. Jay could talk about the 5-week high school program. The elementary program is similar to our K-8 program. And also includes a science enrichment component.
Thank you, Dr.
Lim. Ms. Kerr, or were we done with that?
Dr. Benitez, thank you for your question regarding students with disabilities, and Dr. Simon will highlight some of the ways that we'll support students through summer. But one big idea that I wanted to bring forward is just the perspective that this isn't what we do for some students, this is what we do for all students. And so in many ways, what we are doing to support students with disabilities is very connected to this work through things like after-school tutoring. That's an opportunity that's available to everyone. And so I appreciate the intent of your question, and then we can certainly highlight some of the different funding sources that are used. But the big perspective is this is how we're supporting all of our students, and then some of our students have specialized services attached to their needs because of a disability.
I appreciate that clarification, Dr. Brown, and also coming from that same spirit. I think symbolically it is important to acknowledge this, like you're doing right now, right? That we're covering all students with then these specialized supports and interventions. So thank you for that.
And Dr. Benitez, let's take this off, I feel like I have an echo. Dr. Brown really highlighted eloquently just some thoughts around just all students and how we're preparing for services and interventions that also include our students with disabilities and many of our other students as well. And I know that when Dr. Heenan and Ms. Renee Arcus presented even to the board last week or 2 weeks ago regarding the special education local plan, there were also a few tenets and components that were in there as well in regards to supports, and even how we're just upping the ante on those supports as well to serve our students, better in that way. And so you'll see that there's different funding for special education. I think you heard that even with Dr. Heenan and Ms. Arcus's presentation, that is mostly associated with the LCAP and also with that local plan. So again, for our students with disabilities, it's embedded in this plan, but there's also other funding streams that we utilize to support our students as well.
Thank you, Dr. Simon. And again, I want to build on that because I think two things are occurring. One is I think it is important to highlight, right? Because I think symbolically, when you don't see students with disabilities in that language here as an and or as a part of, because we do see emerging bilingual references here, right? Our foster students references here. So I think it's important for us as a district to not just speak about it, but that it gets reflected, similar to my comment to Mr. Tagorda, right? That if it's connected to a Black Student Initiative, it makes sense to folks. But also that even when it's here, as many of us have heard, either through public comment or through our own engagement with our disability community, that it's important for us to when we're offering these services, when we're talking about these interventions, to explicitly say, right, it's important to explicitly say these services are also available to our students with disabilities or to our disability community. So it's in the spirit of what both you and Dr. Brown referenced.
I think that's a great distinction. I think also highlighting some great things that are happening, right, that are being funded. This is one program, the collaborative co-teaching program, that is expanding and growing, just so we can have more inclusivity, right, within, for our students with disabilities. So that's something I want our parents to know as well. We're very sensitive about always just saying students with disabilities. We're hearing that from our parents as well, to be more inclusive in how we, acknowledge or pinpoint that. But it's a fine balance. I want to say that as well. But I understand that the community wants something more pinpointed and highlighted so they can see just actual numbers that pertain to the resources and services that are going to, right, our students with disabilities as well. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Ms. Kerr?
Yeah, just a technical question to follow up on the specifics of summer school. So we do meal programs through the city. We usually transition to supporting student nutrition by their being able to pick up meals at parks and various city sites. So for our students who are on campus learning, will there be a nutrition program to support that as well, or is it separated?
Yes, we will be running meal programs at our summer school sites. So we will be running perhaps the biggest meal program that we've ever run in this summer.
Great. So students who are on campus don't need to worry about running to a different site that is a traditional summer site. They'll be provided there and vice versa. Great. Thank you. Good luck, Mark, and Nutrition Services.
All right, so I will just finish us off with a couple of thoughts. One is, this is a reminder slide that once we load this plan onto the district website on August 1st, in addition to the plan documents, there will also be a tracker. So the screenshot that the public can see and that you have in the slides is an example of the current funds. This does not include the new ESSER funds. But that will be loaded to the district website so that there's transparency around those large expenditures. And then lastly, just a reminder, so we are through 2 of these plan development timeline steps. The first was finishing the thought exchange, which will continue to be used in our planning. That incorporates input from teachers, administrators, students, and community. tonight the first draft of a project template, so you start to get a glimpse at Pillar 1, and then continued with Pillar 2 and 3 in the next board meeting, and Pillar 4 on June 23rd. So you get the whole plan as it's being developed, and we will continue to use community input that is coming in different ways in building our plan. The other thing that I'll remind you and the public about is that this plan does not have a state deadline. It is our plan. And so if we're 2 months in and decide that we're ready for additions, enhancements, we can do that because it's our plan. And so it will be a regular conversation as we go about the year. One last thing I'd like to share that just goes back to, I think, something that's important philosophically about this work. I think about some of the public comment and some of even the requests about specificity around something like an important Black student achievement initiative or language accessibility. And so we've been doing a lot of work that is taking in input and doing what I might refer to as deep listening. And so I'm just going to ask for the public's patience, because if we want to do something together, when we want to do something together, we want to do something with input, with the lived experience of our community in mind. We can't come out and say, here's the exact plan, or that's doing something to people. And so while I think it can be frustrating in some contexts to think, well, I want more specificity, what are you going to do? If we're true to the idea of the lived experience of our students, of righting wrongs, of addressing system inequities, we also have to be open to a different perspective. And that perspective will come in the form. So specifically, the Black Student Initiative will have an advisory group that I imagine it's not constructed yet. We're going to take input on that, and we're going to propose something for that, and then work on that together. With language accessibility, we're not doing it too, because we know that our language accessibility has not worked so well. And so acknowledging that and having the opportunity to make an investment in that, to do it with somebody, means listening, asking stakeholders who are accessing things through the district, and developing a plan with that perspective in mind. So just want to ask for some patience on that, and just to also hear the philosophy behind some of what we're doing.
Okay, so if there are no further questions or comments, that concludes the information on that staff report. I'm looking around just to check. Okay. So next on the agenda, business items, we have none. Superintendent items, we have none. We have no unfinished business at this time. And so now we're at new business, the expanded learning opportunities grant plan that we've been talking about. And that is an action item, so.
Move approval.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Oh, was there a discussion? I'm sorry.
Yeah. I just want to thank both Jill and all of the staff for putting together the presentation that we had today, talking through some of the details that often can be cumbersome and, for lack of a better term, super sophisticated language, and you made it as primitive for somebody as simple-minded as myself. So thank you for making it very clear.
To use a phrase that you favor, ditto. All in favor by roll call vote. Oh, you have a comment also?
Yes.
You see, I'm trying to rush along. I'm sorry. I'm going to slow down.
We only have one
promise.
item tonight on the as an action item. So we're trying to squeeze in as much as we can here, President Craighead. So I just want to build on Dr. Baker's last comment as an acknowledgement that we do listen and hear public comments. I want to keep encouraging folks to provide input via the mechanisms that Dr. Baker outlined, that Mr. Tagorda outlined, and that there's a lot of reading in between the lines that has to take place as well, right? That because we can't include every single detail to the extent that we want to have a manageable document as it is, it's already pretty pretty comprehensive and lengthy. So again, I would just encourage for our public hearing next week, whether it's exploring Kamai immersion programs at Whittier, sort of what category that would be under, or the Black Student Achievement initiative that Dr. Baker just elaborated on. Because I think the other component of kind of knowing, okay, as a parent, so this is big district budget, big areas, big pillars, huge sort of amount of information, right, to process. Also, if we can think about ways, and Board Member Kerr is excellent at articulating this, what does that look like at a school, right, at Franklin or at Hughes or whatever school we're talking about? Because there's also that a thing of this big budget, what part of it makes its way to this program at this school? So if we're talking about STEAM at Whittier or DI at Chavez, what does that look like for a parent or student at these schools? So again, I would just encourage, with the amazing amount of work that's involved in this, not added to the work, but you all have it in your heads, right? And it was so lovely to be able to have a conversation today amongst all of us. So if you can keep that in mind when we're doing the presentations next week, so that we can connect public hearing on items on the agenda. And that doesn't mean that everything that people provide input to is going to show up, but at least we can continue to be proactively listening, and so that when we do get public comments, that we can say, it's in this area, right? Or, you know what, it didn't make it in the ELO, but it's in the LCAP, right? And it didn't make it in the LCAP or ELO, but that's something to consider with our broader planning. So thank you for today. I loved sort of the specific examples, and not that we have to cover everything, but it would also help me as I'm processing through, okay, how do I want to be strategic and what questions I ask, given that we're covering a lot of information here. So, also good to know what's not in the plan. Right, but how do we think about that and make that a possibility? I heard a great quote last week from a chancellor's office at the CSU. A question was asked, so how do we differentiate between things that sound really good as ideas and things that are actionable? All right, and one of the quotes that he shared is, those things that sound really good, let's put those in our back pocket, because they may not be possible today. But if we would have thought about remote and virtual and distance learning 5 years ago, that probably sounded pretty good. We would have needed that these last 15 months, right? So even when they're not included in these plans, we can say that's in our back pocket, right? So when there is an opportunity, that would be something that would be included, whether through funding or through priorities or through these pillars that Dr. Baker has laid out for us. So thank you, President.
Thank you. Mr. Otto?
Yeah, just very briefly, thank you very much, everybody, including you behind me back here. Tremendous presentation of, when I walked in, I thought, how can I differentiate among these plans? And we're only voting on one of them, and I can't even remember the name of that one, but it was terrific, and I learned a lot, and I understand a lot more than I did when I began. So congratulations. And I was real focused in going through all this about making sure that people felt included, and it's clear to me that a lot of effort has gone into doing that. And like Juan said, yeah, it's not everything, but it's working together, and it's working together with trust. It's working together with the right intentions, and I see a lot of that going on. So congrats.
Thank you. Yeah, I would just add, I appreciate all the work that's gone into this. Everybody's done a fabulous job of explaining it all. It was a little overwhelming, coming into this this evening. I would add that I appreciate having a little key, or at least not just relying on those acronyms. I see somebody has really helped out. It makes it more user-friendly. And I have to think, if I'm a parent trying to figure out what's going on, I might not know what all these acronyms stand for, and so it's very nice to have things spelled out. That makes it user-friendly. I know it's a small thing, but it means a lot, and thank you for doing that. We still have a motion on the floor. We're going to get to that, so unless there are any more comments, all in favor by roll call vote. Dr. Benitez?
That's an aye for me.
Ms. Kerr?
Aye.
Mr. Otto?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And I vote aye. So hearing no opposition or abstentions, that passes unanimously. I'll put my glasses on so I can see where we are. Now we're at report of board members, so we will start with Mr. Otto.
I have none.
Okay, Mr. Miller?
I wanted to highlight an opportunity that's coming up in coming weeks. I want to make sure I get the correct date here. Give me 1 second. Oh my goodness. Oh, here we go. Yes, it is a Juneteenth celebration hosted by a number of supporters, Downtown Long Beach Business Alliance, Antioch Church, Port of Long Beach. It is going to be in downtown Long Beach on June 19th. And so it's an opportunity to celebrate African American history, but also just the history and freedom of African Americans in the city of Long Beach. So should be an awesome event, and you can find more information at www.lbjuneteenth.com.
Thank you. Ms. Kerr?
Yeah, quickly, I just want to congratulate the young men of our Jordan Urban Math Collaborative who are celebrating tonight. We wish we could be with them, but we are here talking about things that were important to them and programs that have really helped them grow. So congratulations to those young men celebrating tonight, and I will see you at graduation. And also just a quick shout out to the Poly Model UN team who put on a conference, a virtual conference of teams from all over the area on Saturday, and Mr. Glogly, their fearless leader. They were inspiring. They had a young woman who is in college, I believe, who was their keynote speaker. But the president, convener of Model UN, stated that they will be the generation that instead of building walls, we will be the ones to tear them down. So congratulations to them for putting on a great conference all day on Saturday. They were truly inspiring.
Thank you. Dr. Benitez?
Thank you. Yes, I want to acknowledge our non-native English speakers that submit public comment. I think about my parents and how hard it would have been for them to engage a school system, and the courage that it takes to not just make the call, but to advocate, provide testimonial, share your experiences with a system that in many ways is foreign to them, but a system that they've entrusted their children to. So whether that's in Khmer, in Spanish, in Tagalog, whatever language, it's important to recognize not just the importance of engaging with our communities, but the importance of engaging with communities that have historically not been able to engage, whether it's through accessibility issues, through marginalization, or outright oppression in our systems. So in that spirit, I've been meeting, as my colleagues know, as most of the team knows, with community members. And as I've shared before, a challenge still continues to be language access to community members. So I'm seeing my space in a whole different light now. I took extensive notes from my meeting in Spanish with community members last night. I'll share it with Dr. Baker and Mr. Tagorda because the vast majority of the questions and thoughts and recommendations that I received are in alignment with our LCAP areas, the 4 pillars that Dr. Baker shared, everything from teacher support to targeted intervention for students that are struggling academically, to digital divide issues, language access, particularly around IEPs, meetings, interactions with staff, parent support in terms of building their own capacity to engage at the school level, and digital literacy to be able to navigate and engage with the tools and the resources that we have available to them. The whole gamut was covered, programming, DI. So I have about 45, Mr. Tagorda, sort of things. I was taking notes, and I said, I'm probably not going to be able to share this all during my board report, but I want to acknowledge our non-native English-speaking community members and how important they are to us, to our decision-making, and to our student success. So thank you, President.
Yes, thank you. I will just mention one thing. I attended an event yesterday for our first-time teachers. And so I want to thank our induction teams, the coaches, and facilitators for this kind of end-of-the-year wrap-up. And also to mention that there were breakout groups. It was a virtual event, and there were breakout groups, and I was able to attend one of the breakout groups, and I was so happy to see that a couple of our first-time teachers were Hispanic males. There was, an Asian female, and I was so inspired by these teachers because they never once complained about anything. Being a first-time teacher in this year that we've had, they only talked about how they want to improve, in what ways they want to improve, and they only had positive things to say about their mentors and their coaches and all the staff that have been helping them along the way. And I think if we have teachers that are coming to us like that, teachers that are stepping up and taking on this very difficult job at the most challenging time you could possibly imagine, and they're still enthusiastic, they're still smiling, they're still excited about the possibilities that lie ahead, I think we're going to be in great shape. So with that, I'll conclude my remarks, and then Dr. Baker.
I'm going to turn my time over to Dr. Lund, who has another celebration to share with you all as we close tonight.
Yeah, just a quick recognition that the State Superintendent, Tony Thurman, recognized 3 of our schools today as California Distinguished Schools. So a huge shout out to Hughes Middle School, Keller Middle School, and Marshall Middle School.
Can I add one on, Dr. Baker? Just recognition of our Most Inspiring Student Award celebration tomorrow night, which will be wonderful and celebratory of the way that our children lift up the things we need to know more about as a community. I had a great opportunity to deliver one of the plaques to a student's home yesterday, so it was just a really nice preview of what's to come tomorrow evening at 5 o'clock. Thanks to the team that put it all together.
Thank you, thank you. Are there any other announcements? Okay, so without objection, we will adjourn. Okay, thank you.